to Deep Thought, Shallow Plots. My name's Erika, and I like to watch horror movies.
My name's Katie, and I like to overanalyze things.
So, Katie, what are we overanalyzing today?
Today, we are talking about Midsommar.
Ari Aster's 2019 Midsommar. Yeah.
Yes. Folk horror beauty.
Yeah. I just would like to just come right out of the gate saying how much I really enjoy Ari Aster's work. Midsommar, absolutely fantastic. Hereditary, really good. And I just recently watched Beau is Afraid, and it didn't necessarily give me this same vibe that Hereditary and Midsommar did. Like, after I watched those two movies, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this again, right? Mm-hmm. But, like, after watching Beau is Afraid, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this again. I was like, there's so much, like, packed into 3 hours, and it's like, I have to watch this again to, like, fully understand. But, like, when am I ever going to have a 3-hour period to dedicate to rewatching Beau is Afraid? And maybe one day, you know.
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen Hereditary. I have now seen Midsommar twice, though.
Yeah. Oh,
and it definitely is better on a rewatch. Not that I didn't like it the first time, but it has so much more on a rewatch.
Yeah, once you, I think that's kind of like Ari Aster's gig, you know? It's just like, there's a lot. And,
it's a rich text.
It's always a rich text, and, like, you feel unsettled, but, like, you don't really fully understand why you feel that way until you give it at least one, maybe a couple more rewatches, right?
Yeah, to get all the pieces coming together and all the symbolism.
And that's, I mean, I've seen Midsommar several times, but, like, this most recent watch I did find to be, like, the most fruitful. You know, things are really starting to come together.
Yeah.
So we wanted to just start by just kind of given the down low on the characters that we have in this film.
And a quick plot. I think from what it sounds like, it's a pretty straightforward folk horror of the idea of, like, random city folk outsiders going to a kind of insular community.
Yeah.
In this case, Horga.
Northern Sweden.
Yeah, in Hälsingland.
Yeah.
Sweden. And getting swept up in some cult activity and some ritual sacrifices.
Yeah, which apparently only happen every 90 years.
Yeah. But I think the cool thing about this one, and what Ari Aster has talked about with it, is that, like, yes, this would be a pretty straightforward folk horror, sort of Swedish slasher, if we were seeing it from the perspective of, like, Christian or any of the other guys who are there. Mm-hmm. But from Danny's perspective, it's just sort of like a macabre fairy tale.
Right.
Where it's like it starts out with her being orphaned. The first thing we know about her is that her whole family dies.
Yeah.
Like, really tragically murder-suicide.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the film, she goes into this new, colorful, magical land.
Yes.
She becomes, you know, accepted by the people. She becomes their queen, you know.
Their
she gets her,
queen,
like, she gets her, like, you know, royal birthright, like always happens in a fairy tale, to the young orphaned heroine. But yeah, let's talk about Danny.
So
let's talk about how
she's
right? Traumatized to fuck.
Right. So we immediately meet Danny as somebody who doesn't have a lot in her emotional life.
Yes.
You know, her sister is obviously...
Her sister's bipolar.
And suffering from her bipolar, like, significantly. To the point that she dies by suicide and takes her parents with her, right?
Yeah.
Which happens in, like, the first 15, 20 minutes of the film. But even before that, she knows that something's wrong, and her sister is,
right,
like,
she knows she's gotten a weird message from her sister, but according to Christian, it's not the first time.
Right, and
she's like this sometimes. She just wants attention.
Yeah, he does sort of, like, place blame on to Danny.
Yeah.
He's like, it's because you let her, right?
Yeah, he does a lot of that. And it's like, yeah, you're just, like, feeding her, and you're giving her attention she doesn't deserve or something. It's like, if she's making these many, if she's reaching out for attention this much, then, like, she needs the attention.
She needs some attention. She really, really needs some help. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll talk at length
about how
Christian's awful Christian is. But so immediately, Danny has lost what we understand to be her entire family.
Yeah.
And so really, her support system is, well, she does have that friend.
The one friend that she has is fascinating to me.
That she talks to on the phone once. Do we get a name for that friend? Just nameless friend?
Just her friend who...
Nameless, faceless friend.
All they talk about is Christian.
And her friend gives really fantastic advice.
Her friend's solid.
Yeah.
She should spend more time with that friend. I don't think she does, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's basically that one nameless, faceless friend who gives really great advice, but is not listened to because, I mean, nobody listens to good advice.
Yeah.
It's not what we do.
But yeah, no, she is straight up like, hey, if Christian is not giving you the emotional support you need, then you do not need him in your life.
Yeah. And it's like, don't worry about you being too much.
Yeah.
Like,
worry about him being enough.
Yeah, finding somebody who's enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, especially for Dani, like trauma is a big ongoing theme, right?
Yeah.
She's traumatized by, you know, the death of her sister and her parents. She like gets traumatized again when she witnesses the ritual suicide. She obviously has like a lot of issues with like anxiety and panic.
Yeah. We see her go into a panic attack multiple times.
Yeah.
And often trying to like hide them from people. She'll go to bathrooms. She'll find this place.
Like, same though.
Well, yeah, nobody likes to cry in public, please.
And or like the idea of wanting to hide your panic attacks or your anxiety attacks from your emotionally unavailable boyfriend. It's like, same girl, same.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. You would want to do that.
But honestly, like, Dani seems like a really cool person. Like, I would hang out with Dani.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I know enough about Dani.
Right.
What is her actual personality?
Right. Well,
what are her interests?
We don't really like get to hear her talk about herself that way. Like, the only way that we get to figure that out is by like the visual cues that Ari Aster gives us, right? Like there's a lot of art on the walls.
That I am so fascinated by the art in Dani's house.
So I actually, you know, I like saw that there was a lot of art in like her house or her apartment, whatever. And obviously the big one is the picture of the little girl wearing a crown and the gigantic bear.
Yeah.
Right. It kind of reminded me of the beginning of Ready or Not, where it just like tells us the whole plot.
Well, and we even have more than that because the actual opening shot of this movie is like a fake tapestry.
Yeah, and opens kind of like a play curtain.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
or like an opera or something.
I actually paused it on the opening title card
good.
to like give it a look, and like the art is very interesting, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is the
entire
story. Okay,
this is the entire plot. Did you look into the bear painting though?
Oh, a little, yeah, because it was created by a Swedish artist.
It is, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
quite
John
well
Bauer,
renowned in Sweden, is my
John Bauer.
John Bauer, yeah.
He was like an illustrator.
John Bauer, because he's Swedish.
Excuse me.
Okay. Yeah.
He did it in 1918.
Oh, it's that old?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He did a number of illustrations for like a fairy tale collection.
Right. Yeah, like Swedish fairy tales. Yeah.
This one specifically was for a short story called Oskuldens Vandring.
Great.
Which is like the innocent's journey.
Oh.
Which is a little on the nose.
There's a lot in this movie
that's a
little on the nose.
No,
yeah.
and then the illustration itself is called Stackars lilla Bass.
Great.
Or Poor Little Bear.
Oh.
Just a poor little bear.
Now, that's interesting because that bear is gigantic in comparison to the
girl with the
crown.
I tried really hard to find a English translation of that short story, that fairy tale, but I could not.
Wow, okay.
I was very upset about it.
That is upsetting.
But I did find out a little bit more about Bauer's life, just because I was kind of curious about it. And one thing that stood out to me is that him, his wife, and their child drowned in a shipwreck together.
Oh, God.
And what was interesting to me about it is that it kind of became a bit of a public spectacle afterwards. I mean, it sounded like it was a situation where, like, the ship just wasn't set up right. But no, it became this, like, spectacle of, like, these, like, superstitions that the nature spirits had come to, like, reclaim him.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that seems...
And his wife and child?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like,
So...
so there's that, and then there's so many other...
Yeah,
she has, like, what looks like some sort of medieval painting of, like, a leviathan attacking a ship above her couch.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah.
Because I think her and Christian have, like, a discussion near, like, a painting like that, and that is kind of what it looks like.
And then also over her couch, there's one that's just, like, the phases of the moon.
Yeah.
Which is, like, cycles of nature.
Phases of the moon, yeah.
Cycles of nature are so important in this movie. And then another one, people talked about online, one of, like, it looks like a woman being worshipped by, like, people or something. I didn't catch that one. I'm wondering if I just really did not see properly this other one that to me looked like a woman who looked like naked and distraught, and there were like eating apples around her. And I was like, is this some sort of like Eve thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. But but she has so many different paintings and photographs and pictures and so many books.
Yeah.
And I was really, it did make me very curious about, like, what are her interests? What are her passions?
Yeah, and we never really get to find out.
Like, why does she have all this?
She is the main character in this film.
Like, why does she have medieval art and, like, Swedish illustrations?
So, like, and we know that Christian and his friends are like PhD candidates.
Yeah.
Are they all studying anthropology?
At least
I imagine
two of them. I don't know why they'd be friends at that level.
I don't know.
Though I cannot imagine Mark doing anthropology.
What? Oh my god. Okay, let's just time out on Mark because
we can't deal with Mark right now.
I'm gonna go on a tangent about Mark, and we need to give Danny her time.
Yeah.
Right, and it's just like, so like your boyfriend is very highly educated, right?
Yeah.
So like, what about you? Like, what's your education
she's a psychology major. She's studying
Oh my gosh,
psychology.
of course. She does say that to Pele because Pele is
the only person who asks about her.
who's interested.
And Danny as a person.
She wants to be a psychology, or she is a psychology major.
Yeah, she's taking this semester off. She's taking.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Take a year off, Danny.
Girl, take
2 years off. Yeah.
I mean, I think she's going to take the rest of her life off.
I think she is too.
There's that. But
I mean, hey, like Stockholm has wonderful universities. You know, anyway,
if the cult will let her leave.
If the cult will let her leave, yeah.
But I am curious about why she goes with psych. If it has to do with her history with her sister, of like, you know, wanting to understand her sister more,
right? Or
wanting to
if
understand
that's
her
just
family
something
dynamics.
that she's been interested in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we just don't know.
Yeah.
She does make a joke about like, you can see how crazy I am because I want to study psychology.
Okay, so that actually does give us a little bit of an understanding of Danny as a person.
Yeah, it is interesting though that she seems to be the one who like isn't an anthropologist and is very much going into this situation in Sweden with like the least understanding of what she could be getting into.
Right, yeah.
She even says like, I'm not an anthropologist. I don't understand any of this.
Yes.
Like those are her exact words.
Yeah. I think really she wants to go to like appease Christian.
Yeah, and I think maybe to not be alone.
Yeah, right?
Because he's going to be gone for a while.
Did you also she's in Sweden on her birthday, right?
Yeah.
Which means which Christian forgets, by the way.
We'll talk about
which
that.
means that Christian would have been gone
on her birthday. Yeah.
Her first birthday after
her entire family, as far as we know, died.
Is dead, yeah. And
girl,
really what Danny should have done is like hooked up with that friend on the phone, like hung out with that friend. But, you know, then we wouldn't have this movie. Yeah. So it's whatever.
I think I want to get into like her relationship with Christian and like who Christian is, because
Christian fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, he's like totally emotionally unavailable. Totally disregards Danny's feelings about everything. Yeah. Especially her sister. And he's wrong like a lot. Confidently wrong.
I did find it, going back to that friend of Danny's that we don't know, I found it interesting when Danny's like, I've never seen Christian cry. I'm the only one who's leaning on him for support. Yeah. You know, and his friend has to be like, or you're the only one who's like actually opening up. Because that's what like intimacy in a relationship is. About it, yeah. and that like Danny just is so traumatized that she doesn't really understand that she is not the problem in this relationship.
She doesn't understand. No. Well, yeah, and also like anxiety, recognize anxiety. Like Danny is so like seems like when she's interacting with Christian's kind of shitty friends,
completely shitty friends,
is like she's affable, you know, she's friendly,
yeah, she's fine.
She's kind of like deferential a little, you know,
yeah.
And I think like that is sort of like a coping mechanism of just like I will just be, you know, deferential and I'll just kind of go with whatever's going on, like don't worry about my needs, you know.
Yeah. One of the moments when I most felt Danny was in that moment when she feels like she's awkwardly sort of like keeping Christian from being able to go on that like mushroom trip with his friends.
Which she's not. He can totally, do it.
But then like she doesn't want to be the square girlfriend who's like not down to hang.
There's a lot of codependence.
And I was just like, I felt that one in my bones. I was like, oh, here's the horror story.
I also
like dating a guy with shitty friends who's also shitty, and also he likes his shitty friends more than he likes you.
Yeah, and like
who hasn't been there?
Yeah, totally passive aggressive. Like the only way he knows how to communicate is in a passive aggressive manner,
which is so interesting. This is the other thing that I wondered if it was something that she learned from her family, because it almost, or if it's just been such a pattern with Christian that she like skips steps, because there's so often where like she starts to try to have a conversation with him, and then immediately apologizes to him for something that she did not do, but is his fault.
Yes. Yep.
Like, it's such a red flag.
Yeah.
The one that really got me in that regard was when she's telling Pele that Christian forgot her birthday, and then immediately says, no, oh no, I forgot to remind him. It's my fault. It's not his fault. Like,
no, like it's his fault. Yeah. And then I like his little excuse of like the daylight messed me up.
It does seem like her birthday is something that she's like, She brings it up a few times.
She's excited about it, yeah.
When she starts crying, when she's having her first bad trip, she tries to get herself to stop crying by being like, it's your birthday tomorrow. So it seems to be something she's like looking forward to
and gets excited about, yeah.
And when he's just a piece of shit.
Christian sucks.
Yeah, and I guess the big thing about him sucking is how much he does not do confrontation.
Oh no! Oh my god! Yeah, it's like he only communicates passively or passive aggressively. Right. It's like
but he does it in all of his relationships to such an extreme extent. It's like over a year of him being with her, where he's wanting to break up with her, but is just not.
Yeah, and just won't. Yeah, and it's like, dude, aren't you a PhD candidate? Like, you could be busy, right? And then I think, what do his friends say in that scene? Like, you know, date other people. Then you know, like you could be. Like, what is that like sexy waitress comes by or whatever, and Mark's like, you could be impregnating her right now. And does Pele say,
it's such a good foreshadowing moment.
Does he say have sex with, or does he
says impregnate.
He says impregnate. Oh my,
I have it.
Okay, I did not catch that until this viewing.
Yeah. Wait, give me a second, because I have the whole quote.
Yeah.
Pele's literal first words. After Mark says that about how you could go impregnate that waitress, Pele's first words in this movie is, don't forget about all the Swedish girls you can impregnate in June. Yeah. And like in the context, it does just seem like douchebag guy talk.
Yeah, douchebag guy talk. However, I think also something I noticed, you know, you had mentioned how much Christian seems to care more about his shitty friends than his girlfriend, right? But does he care about his shitty friends?
That is a good question.
He's a total dick to Josh. Like, he basically takes his PhD thesis. Yeah. Just like takes it, right? And he totally throws Josh under the bus. Like,
that one was
first
wild.
Chance he gets.
Yeah.
And he's like, we do not affiliate ourselves with him. We do not
He's
support
not our
anything
friend.
He does. He's not our friend.
If you stole your book, we want nothing to do with him. We hope he is brought to justice.
Yeah. And it's just like
he's so.
But like, and it's like, it's way overkill because like the Jorga don't say anything about that.
Yeah.
Like, they don't mention anything about that. And he's just like, I denounce him. He's not my friend. He never was.
Yes.
Like,
I don't know him.
I was like, you stole his PhD thesis. What are you talking about?
What I found really interesting about that too, though, is that Christian was so good at stealing the PhD thesis that he actually
was.
Well, he was the only one who thought to go to ask Pele if he could actually do it. Josh goes later and is like, by the way, is it cool if I do my PhD thesis on this? And Pele's like, no, the elders are not going to be cool with you writing anything.
Right.
And he's like, I'll ask, which is obviously just him killing for time because all these people are going to be dead in no time. But like,
yeah.
But yeah, like Josh doesn't even ask if he can do it. At least Christian asks.
No, that's really interesting to me because it seems obvious to me that Josh is interested in writing his thesis on something about Midsommar rights.
He's specifically doing it about various European Midsommar rights because they also talk about how he's then going to go to, like, I think Germany and like
England.
England to do it.
Which he never gets to do.
I do really love when Josh actually kind of tears Christian down.
Fuck yeah.
When he's like, find your own subjects.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this. Yeah. Like, I'm invested in this.
That's the other thing. Yeah, exactly.
It's
like,
not
he's
like a
passionate
hobby.
about it. And like Christian's just like, I don't know, I guess since I'm here, I'll do my thesis on this.
God, he
like,
fucking
he's
sucks.
Not even really thinking about it.
Yeah, so I have to assume that Josh just sort of assumed that Pele would have said something sooner if it wasn't okay.
Again, like the passive aggressive communication. Like Josh and Pele like needed to probably have this discussion before they even left for Sweden.
Yeah, just talking about how this whole group of friends is not very good at communicating. He doesn't tell his friends that he invited Danny to go to Sweden until they're literally about to see her. She's coming up the stairs, and he's like, so I said that she was invited, and you just need to say that it was your idea and that you want her to come, and don't worry about it. She'll back out. Like, what the fuck are you doing, Christian? None of this is a good idea.
Oh my God.
He's just like so hoping so strongly that it'll all just sort of go away on its own. That she'll just decide on her own not to go. He was really hoping, I think, that he would never even have to bring it up with his friends, that he even invited her. Because he was so hoping that she would just be like,
would just say no. Yeah. Which, honestly, if I were invited to Sweden, I would go.
Yeah. Would you go with your shitty boyfriend right after your family died?
If I were Danny and, like, in Danny's shoes, yeah, I probably would go.
Yeah,
I
what
know
else
that,
is she
like,
doing?
I don't think she understands what, a shitty boyfriend he really is.
Yeah.
I don't think she fully understands.
I think she just doesn't imagine being without him for that long.
Yeah.
Because who else does she have?
She can't, yeah.
Her friend who she doesn't want to listen to.
You know, maybe she's, like, got feelings like this is what she deserves, right? Or like this is the best she'll be able to do.
That is another question I have. I guess my last sort of question about Christian before we start talking more generally about other characters is like, do you see him as... Okay, so there's this moment where Christian is with all of his friends, our first time seeing them all together. And Mark sees that Danny is calling Christian yet again. And he says, it's literally abuse. She's abusing you.
Oh, yes.
And like, meanwhile, Christian knows that Danny got something that sounded kind of like a suicide email from his sister and is not going over there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I don't know, there's that really telling line where after Simon leaves without telling Connie, supposedly, and Danny's like, I could see you possibly doing that to Christian. Like, just like...
And isn't he defensive about it? He's like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, literally, you would leave without me.
Yeah. I don't know what I fucking said. So just this idea
it's
that,
not
like...
a metaphor.
I mean, I don't think Mark actually thinks that Danny is abusing.
No.
I think Mark's just a piece of shit.
Yeah, I think Mark...
But do you think that...
is immature. Yeah.
Do you see... Christian as being like emotionally abusive or just emotionally like
unavailable?
closed off?
I think he's just unavailable. I mean, it was pretty shitty thing for him to say all those things about like, of course your sister does this all the time. Like that was a shitty thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think he's just unavailable.
Yeah. Cause I saw some people responding to it as like,
because he can't or he won't.
Yeah, I just saw some people talking about him that way. And I was like, they definitely have an unhealthy dynamic. He's definitely a piece of shit.
Yeah.
The way that Danny responds to him sometimes seems like she's responding as somebody who has been abused, or like as somebody who has has complex PTSD.
Yeah,
but I don't necessarily think that's because of him. I think that's just a habit that they've fallen into because of who they both are.
It's what they know
individually, and so they go into it. And like how she walks on eggshells and apologizes and stuff.
You just kind of go with what you know. Yeah. You just fall back into the habits, even if they're unhealthy.
Yeah,
or like toxic.
Yeah,
you just fall back into your habits, like. As somebody who's like working really hard to like communicate assertively, it's really hard and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And like you just don't want to.
Yeah.
You know? So you just fall into the same old stuff even though it's bad.
Oh my God. By the way.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how Christian's name is really fucking on the nose.
His name is literally Christian. Again, did you catch on the nose.
Danny's last name, Ardor?
No,
Danny Ardor.
Ardor. What's that?
Intense emotions. When you're like ardorous, you know?
Okay.
When I love you ardently, like that kind of ardor is like intense emotion. It also means burning.
Oh.
What
language?
Burning. Oh, I don't know.
Nah.
It's English.
So maybe like German or
French, you know?
Yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
Fascinating. I did not catch that. That's really cool.
Yeah. There's a few names like that. There's Christian. There's Maya. Of course, May. But no, I think we'll talk more about how Christian is like a Christian martyr.
Yeah, let's talk about that later. I just like really want to establish some thoughts on Pele.
Okay, you know what my first thought on Pele?
Yeah,
just because it's me being dumb.
Yeah.
The shock I felt on the second viewing, because I remembered him being so attractive, and the first time I see him though, I was just like, I mean, he's nice, but he's kind of just some dude. I remembered him being gorgeous.
Wow.
But then by the end of the number of times that the way that he looks at Danny with like all that love and empathy in his eyes.
And he like,
I was just like, okay, no, wait, I remember now. Yes, no, he is.
And honestly,
like he's just some dude, but also.
And also like when he's wearing like their traditional garb and like he has like that leaf crown kind of towards the end. I'm like,
but no, the first scene of him, I was just like, wait, that's him?
Also, you know what I really noticed is like when Danny wins May Queen, right? And Pele comes up to her and like
fully kisses her on the mouth.
And like looking at that kiss, I'm like, damn, that's a passionate kiss.
I am normally...
That's not like a friendly, I'm so proud of you, congratulations kiss.
I normally hate a non-consensual kiss. I like to know that this kiss is wanted by both parties. But that one, I'm giving it a pass. I don't know. She's drugged out of her mind. Don't care. It's a good kiss.
She's physically and emotionally exhausted, which we'll talk about.
Don't care. It's a good fucking
care. That was a good kiss.
So I am aware that I would fall susceptible to this cult because of this man. I am aware.
Having seen this movie a couple of times, but like hadn't seen it in like a year and a half, I asked myself what would come to be a very silly question, which is, what does Pele know and when does he know it?
Oh, yeah.
About like the cult thing?
Oh, and all of it always.
Obviously, the answer is he knows all of it and he knew it the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, obviously.
I know. And I did, though, my question about him sort of related to that was like, is his feelings for Danny genuine? Does he actually, is he so bought into all of this that he really does believe that this is good for her? Or is he clocking that she just lost her whole family and that makes her a really good mark?
Right. And does it matter?
Yeah.
I think that Pele might see Danny as like a perfectly viable new member of their community.
Yeah.
Right? Because like he's the one who's immediately says like, I'm so excited you're coming.
He's the only one who actually looks excited about
He
it.
shows her pictures of the May Queen.
You can just see the look in his eyes
Yeah.
where he's like, he's already decided that she is going to be the next May Queen.
Yeah, she's
like he
already
is
decided, yeah.
on board for this.
And so he is probably taking these people to either be indoctrinated and stay in
be a part of the
Orga,
family,
or be sacrificed.
Yeah.
So that's what I don't understand. Is like, so if Pele knows that the entire time, why wouldn't he just be like, yeah, Josh, yeah, Christian, whatever you need. Because you're going to be sacrificed anyway.
I don't know. Maybe he didn't want them looking around too much.
Right, to get too much
Because then they might figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how Josh is dumb and should have realized there was something going on later
sweet
because Josh really missed some big signs.
He really did. But I think he was like blinded by like his sex drive. Like I think he just really, really wanted to get laid.
Oh, Mark,
not Josh.
Josh
Mark.
Was blinded by his
Academia.
Yeah. Speaking of Mark, there is another line. Mark has a few really prescient lines where he sees.
Man.
I mean, because he's the one who talks about impregnation, which
Yes, he
allows
does.
Pele. And then another one he does when they first get to Sweden. He asks why the women are hotter.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And I think it's Josh maybe who says it's because Vikings, picked
Yeah.
up all the hottest people and brought them over,
Right.
dragged them over here. And I'm
Kinda.
like, literally, what is Pele doing right now? He's kind of picking up the hottest
Also-
woman from America and dragging her over to Sweden.
I'm so happy you didn't mention this because I want to. Also, literally the minute that they arrive in Orga, he makes a Waco connection. He knows that this is kind of culty,
Yeah.
right? Even though I will say, if you have ever seen footage or still images of that Branch Davidian compound in Waco wishes that it looked as good as Orga does.
Yeah. But I also actually want to
True.
talk about how Pele is a little bit prescient too, maybe?
What does that word mean?
Can see the future. Just because, well, like I said about how he seems to clock her as being a great May Queen, and what does she ends up as the May Queen.
She
and
does, yeah.
that drawing he makes of her with the crown where she already is looking like a May Queen.
Right.
But then there's also...
Or is he manifesting it,
Right, I know. It's interesting. It is true. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. But then there's the opening shot of the movie that we were talking about, the tapestry. Pele, him, did you look at him in it?
Yeah,
There's
he's in the
Danny.
tree.
Yeah, he's up in a tree
Yeah.
above Danny and Christian when they're
seems to
looking
be
sad.
writing or
Or
drawing
drawing.
something.
I assume he's drawing, but it's very much this puppet master overseeing everything. And then later he's leading everybody into the town,
Yeah.
and it looks like he has a flute or
Oh,
something.
yeah, he's a Pied Piper.
Yeah, he's leading them all, which really makes him feel more like a puppet master or like a deceiver, so much more of a manipulator.
Like a Pied Piper.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk more about the Maypole story later too, where it literally is people being led by dance.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. But the other thing, I think it was actually a Reddit post or something like that, some fan theory talking about how maybe Pele is actually being set up to be the next Oracle. Because they talk about how the Oracle has unclouded intuition.
Right.
And then at the end, right before everybody's burned alive.
Yes.
And burned dead. When we see Pele, one of our last shots of Pele with his little leaf crown,
Yes.
they talk about him being honored for his unclouded intuition in bringing them their May Queen.
Right, yeah.
And it's just
quite a few sacrifices.
quite a few
Yeah.
sacrifices. Boy, did good.
3, yeah.
So yeah, he seems to know everything that's going on, maybe even more so than other people.
Right.
The other thing I never would have caught on the first round is when Pele says that his parents burned. They died in a fire.
Yeah.
And I'm like a sacrificial?
Well, now that sacrificial thing, when they get
say
there, every 90 years,
The feast happens.
I was like, okay, what does happen every 90
I know, because if they're killing people every year,
That's
nah,
way too much.
babies. Nah, babies.
yeah, every 90 years,
Yeah.
they would make and they do make a sacrifice of 9 people.
Yeah.
So,
But then I don't know. But I was curious, do they have other things they do at other times? The other interesting thing is that we technically only see, this is a 9-day festival.
yes,
We do not see them for 9 days. This is not,
but also I think
unless we lose a lot of time, which is possible.
We do. Well, I mean, doesn't the 9-day festival end in the burning of?
We don't know.
Yeah,
It doesn't say that it's the end.
But
But as far as her going to sleep, it's only been 4 days or something.
We do know that it's hard to measure time because
the sunlight,
it's summer
it's
and the
purposely,
sun isn't,
disorienting.
very high north.
Yeah, it's very disorienting. So I don't know, but it's interesting. And then it's like, is that a true story, or is Pele like finding points to like empathize with her, you know, make connections with her?
Right, yeah.
How much is he actually a manipulator, and how much is he genuine? I feel like he's genuine in most of the things he says, but I also feel like
he sure sounds genuine.
But I also feel like he's a manipulator, and I don't see why it can't be both, because he is bought into this cult.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. Something I noticed right away that I was like, that's culty, is like the separation of children from their parents.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're all raised together.
Yeah,
Everybody's a brother and a sister.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He mentions, he's like, oh, this is Ingmar, my brother. We were born on the same day.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that what makes you brothers, being born on the same day? You know.
But then he seems to call like every woman that he talks to sister. And
Right,
it's like... To the point that Christian even has to be like, so what's the deal with like the incest?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they're like, no. We keep really accurate accounts of who's everybody's lineage is, all of their bloodlines, and then we bring in outsiders. Don't ask any more questions about it.
Yeah, right. And you know, I was also thinking about the fact that like the movie's called Midsommar, and like the point is that like they're very far north, and so it's June, so it's like light a lot. And of course, Dani likes it, and we can talk about how she feels by the end of the film. Yeah. But it's just like, girl, you haven't lived there over a winter yet. Like,
girl, you do not know.
Yeah, maybe why don't you try a winter there, and then we'll see how you feel. Although I'm sure that cult makes it very cozy. Like, I'm sure they build fires. I'm sure they.
I mean, they all stay in those rooms together, keep each other warm.
This is true. Yeah,
big old bonfires. I'm sure where they might sacrifice more people. I don't want to assume.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to talk about Mark and Josh now?
Should we get into them?
Yeah, so Christian's a dick, and Mark is also a dick. And I'm really happy when he dies.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things he says is that Christian should break up with Dani so that then he can go date somebody who will actually sleep with him. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, why are you even getting involved in their sex life?
Yeah, why do you care so much? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was actually kind of wondering, because like Mark does seem to be a bad influence on Christian.
Yeah.
Or is it the other way around?
Or are they all just drawn together because they're all pieces of shit?
Yeah, they're all pieces of shit who are maybe overeducated or something. I don't know. Obviously, we get the like just absolutely lovely foreshadowing of them like hanging out with Connie and Simon and Ingmar, and like the kids are playing, and someone asks like, "Oh, what are they playing?" And as Pele says, it's like, "Oh, they're playing Skin the Fool."
Yeah. And Simon calls it precious, and I'm like, oh, buddy.
Oh, you don't even know.
You think that now.
And that's exactly how Mark dies. Like, it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, he ends up skinned, and they put a little jester's hat on his head.
And also, he has the jester hat in the opening
in the little tapestry.
Yeah, so he really is, like, the capital F fool the entire time. Yeah.
And fools often accidentally speak the truth.
Truly.
Which he does a few times.
He does a few times.
Like calling out the cult activity.
I think that also makes him a fool. Like, honestly, to me, what makes him a fool is his constant vaping.
I know, who goes into this beautiful... It just starts vaping.
Yeah, and peeing on the ancestral tree.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, first of all, dude, like, there are bathrooms.
I know. I was like, why did you... And, like, that's not even, like, off in the woods. That's, like, still in the middle of this fucking community.
That feels like some, like, unchecked male privilege to me.
Yeah.
It's just, like, I can just pee wherever I want.
Yeah.
Like, no...
Like, what the fuck? Even if that wasn't a special tree, it's still, like, people are here. Children are here. Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Kids are playing right there.
And he's, like, very interested in, like, trying to get laid.
Yeah.
Right?
God, I cannot imagine him as an anthropology major.
He is quite offensive. Yeah. Like, Mark and Christian are both several times very disrespectful to like the culture they're in.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know about you, Mark, but like, again, PhD candidate in anthropology, Christian, like, have some tact.
And yet Christian can bring that up when Dani's freaking out about the stupa that they saw where people fucking killed themselves.
Right.
And Christian's like, well, it's a different culture. They'd probably think, you know, us putting our elderly in homes is like really bad too, or whatever he says exactly.
Right.
You know, so he like can use it as like a defense or whatever to like be like, yeah, I'm not freaking out about this, not because I'm emotionally closed off, but because I'm an anthropology candidate. So and it's like, no, you just suck. But
and, you know,
you're right in this case, but also you suck, and also Dani is right to have this really overwhelming emotional response to seeing people commit suicide when her parents and sister just died via murder suicide.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was actually like, I do kind of like the character of Josh.
Josh is
I do.
way more interesting to me than
Yeah,
Mark.
I like
Mark
him.
is just like your traditional the guy who just wants to get laid and who sucks.
Yeah.
Josh, though, Josh is interesting.
Yeah, like I like him. He does seem like very interested and like dedicated to this field of study.
Yeah.
However, what you said the word for it, like that ritual suicide.
At stupa.
Josh, when Pele says, you know,
Yes.
and Josh is like, really, a real one? And he's like, yeah. And Danny and Christian are asking, what is it? And I was like, Josh, you really should have told them.
I mean, no, he just he smiles at Danny in this way that's like, oh, this is going to be funny for me. And it's like, you know her history.
Yeah.
All of Christian's friends know her history.
You know what happened.
Pele's the only one who will actually bring it up and be like, I'm sorry that happened to you, but you all know it.
But also, Pele doesn't say anything either.
Well, yeah, I sort of like, I mean, the sinister reading of it is because this is a part of breaking her down.
Yes,
and, you know, making her slowly warm up to further murders. The more sympathetic reading is that he is so bought into this culture that it doesn't occur to him that this would be troubling, because to them, it's this really beautiful thing. It's the cycle of life.
Right.
It's about reincarnation. She has... The woman who jumped is Ilva, and the baby about to be born will inherit her name. Yeah. And so it's like, we don't get old, we don't die in like fear and shame.
Right.
We like just give our life, and that it's like this gesture, and that's like this beautiful thing.
And she's like, and when I'm 72, me too.
So like my sympathetic reading towards Pele is that he's like, this is a beautiful thing that we're allowing these people to be a part of, you know? And the cynical one is that like he's very aware that he's breaking these people down.
Using it to like manipulate her,
But me as Danny,
yeah,
I would have a certain amount of like understanding for why nobody in Haruga said anything, because like this is their culture, they're used to it.
They do.
But Josh not saying anything, I would murder him.
Yeah, that's
like
fucked.
what the fuck?
So can I just like take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about like the field of anthropology?
Yeah.
So I found this actually really great article called "The Source of Horror: An Anthropological Perspective on Midsommar and the Vivitch" by the author's name is Ellery Denham. So this is a quote from the article, and then I kind of have my rebuttal. So it says, the underlying principle of anthropology is that all cultures have value and are valid as a way of understanding the world, right? Which kind of goes with like the only reason we could possibly excuse any of them for not warning Danny that the ritual suicide was going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to ignore the unprofessional and immoral anthropology carried out by Josh, right? He breaks into their sacred temple at night to take pictures after being explicitly told not to, right? And you know, the thing is that like anthropologists have committed those same disrespectful acts and worse, right? In pursuit of their research, right? And the Ellery Denham says like it's an unavoidable stain on the history of the discipline, right? They go on to say, consider another version of the story where the community the American students visit is not comprised of light-skinned Swedes. It feels in a way as though the movie had to be set in Northern Europe because it needs a certain exoticism in order to work. And if it had been set anywhere else that served that purpose, Asia, Africa, Polynesia, any indigenous community, or in any colonized country, the narrative would have been flagrantly problematic.
Right.
And what I have to say is, exactly. I really like the way this movie does like a subversion of anthropology, right? Like as a science with like a long history of being rooted in white supremacy.
Right, yeah,
Truly. As like this very dark-skinned black man, Josh is studying very white cultures and white societies, you know?
It is an interesting switch, you're right.
Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, of course, that's why it's good. I don't know. And Mark and Christian, these other light-skinned people, are incredibly disrespectful several times to this culture, or just like ignorant of a culture that at least Christian is supposed to be there to study.
Yeah.
Like they're so ignorant and like disrespectful.
Just awful.
Over and over again.
Even leaving, actually, now that I think about it, I've never thought about this before, leaving beside the fact that they're anthropology majors, Pele's like their friend, who they've known for like at least a year.
A while, yeah.
Oh, you don't know anything about him and his culture and his family? This is all new to you?
I kind of wonder, you know, again, watching it, I feel like Pele is sort of buying his time.
Yeah.
He's like,
And he's
I'm going to
downplaying shit.
sacrifice these fuckers so hard. And like my ancestors will be so happy and my community will be so happy.
I mean, one goes back and forth on whether or not you're like, yeah, fucking sacrifice these bitches. Or whether you're like, none of the things they do is actually worth dying for.
And kind of viewing the Orga as like a white supremacist cult specifically, I think also adds like a nice extra tasty layer.
I do think it's interesting that like they kill Mark after he like urinates on their sacred tree.
Right.
Understandable.
I mean, he was already
well,
gonna
that's the
die,
thing. And then they bludgeon Josh when he's in the act of like trying to steal pictures of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, one feels like they were going to die anyway. Mm-hmm. Or were they waiting for some sort of transgression before they killed them? Mm-hmm. Like, because it's also kind of unclear on how much quote unquote new blood they actually invited. Because then when Ulf, he's one of the Hargans who puts himself up to be sacrificed. Mm-hmm. They talk about how Ulf and Ingmar also brought new blood. And they were also now giving their bodies. And it's like, what new blood did Ulf bring? Were there other people who could have been sacrificed?
I definitely, you can see, like, especially in those kind of earlier shots when they get there, like, there's a lot of people in, like, kind of the traditional garb. But there's a lot of people wearing, like, other stuff.
And but then I wasn't sure if that's just because, like, Pele's still wearing other clothes, too.
That's true, but he changes eventually.
Yeah, so then I'm like, is this just because they just got home after being on their pilgrimage?
Right.
And so then I was like, yeah, do they wait for some sort of transgression? Mm-hmm. Or did they only invite these people and they already knew that they were going to be sacrificed?
I wonder if they, like, are kind of waiting for a transgression, but like just litter the possible transgressions just everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many ways you could transgress. Like it's a choose your own adventure. You know,
it's Cabin in the Woods. It's very Cabin in the Woods, yeah. One does wonder.
Yes.
No, because I mean it does seem like maybe they also have a possibility for Mark to be one of the outsiders that they mate with. And that's really what he thinks is happening.
Which I think, honestly, that also happens.
It might have. It's unclear.
I think both happen.
I kind of do too.
Not unlike what happens with Christian.
Yeah,
right?
I think so too.
We just get to see it with Christian.
We'll talk more, I think, about it being a white supremacist cult. Yeah. But the fact that never seems to be a possibility with Josh.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Or Connie and Simon.
You want to
talk about them now?
I do really want to talk about Connie and Simon.
Go ahead.
And Ingmar. And, like, the relationship that those three have.
Uh-huh.
Because, oh, my God. I don't know. It makes me, like, viscerally upset. Because the first thing we learn about their relationship is Ingmar saying that him and Connie used to date. And Connie... Immediately, Connie is like, we went on one date, and I didn't know it was a date.
Oh.
Which is just like, ooh.
Yeah.
And so just the idea of Ingmar knew her before she even met Simon. Yes. Now she's engaged to Simon.
Yes.
Simon makes this dumb joke where he's like, and now Ingmar's going to officiate our wedding. And Danny's like, really? And he's like, no, of course not. You kidding me? You know, like they have this weird relationship where they seem to be aware that Ingmar is weirdly a part of their relationship.
Yeah.
Or like is still carrying a torch for Connie or something. Like they're aware of this.
There's something.
That there's something going on in this relationship.
Yeah.
And yet they traveled to Sweden with him, which I guess
they
is
go
like...
to Sweden with him, yeah.
Yeah, because they're all friends.
Yeah.
They just, like, genuinely think that Ingmar, you know, loves them. And maybe he loves Connie a little bit too much, but, you know, he loves them.
And wants to, like, share his culture with
them.
them.
And it's, like, really... But from, like, Ingmar's perspective, why does he bring Connie and Simon? Is it because he wants revenge or whatever?
I totally thought that. I was like, is he doing this for revenge? Right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Although it is interesting because, like, I feel like Connie and Simon are both, like, racially ambiguous.
Yeah.
But
they're definitely darker skinned, though.
Appear white.
Yeah, they're not white.
And
I would not.
The only reason that's relevant is because
we'll talk about the white supremacy later.
The reason why this is specifically not just a cult, a white supremacist cult, right?
Yeah.
Is that like Connie would never be an option, right? And I read something online that was like maybe Ingmar thought that Connie could become May Queen.
Yeah.
You know, but I was just like, I don't know, man. I don't think they were ever...
I mean, I guess it depends on how much you read them as a white supremacist cult versus just Swedish.
But then at the end... Ingmar sacrifices himself.
Yes.
So, like, I think that, like, regardless of how he felt about Connie, like, he knew it wasn't going to happen. And so he's just like, okay,
let's all die together.
Go to Sweden and, like, you two will be sacrificed. And
then
I will
die with you.
Because
they talk about how it's like when they're all being sacrificed, you know, whoever's leading that. Siv? maybe, is the one who says it. She's the one who like tends to lead a lot of the things.
Yeah,
Civ.
the kind of announcer person.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think she might have been the one who says, "You will today be joined in harmony with everything."
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that Ingmar's whole motivation?
Yeah.
Is to be like joined in harmony with
like,
Connie and Simon?
Is he buying into it? Like, if he and Pele are brothers,
Yeah.
then like, yeah, maybe he's all in. Like,
Right,
he
yeah.
drank the Flavor Aid, and he's like, yeah, you know.
And he,
although
like-
then that does make me wonder, like, does he have an attraction to Connie? Because like this is
That's
such a white culture.
I
that,
know. I just find their relationship fascinating in
Right.
a way that I can never find the answers for because I
would-
don't think they're in the text.
Yeah, we definitely need to give it a couple more watches and really
Yeah.
focus on them.
Just one other thing that I do find interesting about Connie and Simon is that once again, their good friend Ingmar did not warn them about the Outstupa.
No.
And their response is so different than the Americans' responses.
This is true.
They're both
freak
from London.
out.
They're both
Yeah.
from London. They are yelling like, "What the fuck is wrong with
Yeah.
you? You people are fucked up. How is
Yeah.
everybody just watching these people die?"
Yeah.
And like that's why they want to start leaving.
Yeah.
And it's such a contrast to all of the Americans who are just like,
Oh,
they're just like stoned. They're like, I mean, they're very, they're freaking out in their own ways, but
they're like
very
in
quietly.
in like a shock. Like
Yeah, they
can't-
have a complete But Simon and Connie are like, they even yell at the man not to jump after they see the woman jump.
And then, well, there's your transgression, right?
I'm assuming that was their transgression. Yeah,
they fucked up or interrupted.
they made a big scene,
or
and it's right
were
after that.
disrespectful to like what is
Yeah.
supposed to be a very like
Yeah.
important,
Yeah.
ritual for them.
Because it's very shortly after that when Simon supposedly left without Connie.
Yeah.
And then the thing, I actually really love how we get kind of where everybody is when they hear Connie scream somewhere in the distance.
Yes.
Where they just hear a little bit of a scream.
And then a splash.
Yeah.
Very big splash. Yeah.
I think it alludes to the fact that maybe Connie is drowned.
Yes.
That's how they kill
Well,
her.
and they do, even like in that one quick shot as they're wheelbarrowing her body.
She
to
looks
the
sort
thing,
of, yeah.
It's like there are a few things to indicate that she's been drowned. Yeah.
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 And of course, Simon is blood-eagled. But do we want to get into our literary corner?
Literary corner.
Because I will talk about the blood eagle in it.
Please do.
So I just want to talk about some of the things that they say that are like significant to Norse culture, and then some of the things that are like kind of coming from Swedish folklore, some of the things that are very much not historically accurate. And end with how Josh, who is supposedly an anthropologist who is passionate about this, should have noticed that this is a weird fucking cult and not actually like an accurate portrayal of this kind of culture.
Right, but I almost kind of wonder if Josh, like, because, again, they allude to the fact that, like, he's going on after Sweden.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
he's going to Germany.
How much he knew about Sweden specifically versus like English Midsommar.
and Midsommar rights in general.
Yeah.
And maybe this just sort of fell into his lap.
Yeah.
Like he just met
It's possible.
Pele and was just like, oh,
Oh,
I have a
oh,
village,
oh.
we do Midsommar rights. And he's just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I could so see Pele being like, oh, you study Midsommar, you say? What are the chances?
And also, what are the odds that they would fall right on, like, the 90th year in their
I
90-year
know.
cycle?
Pele really lucked out this one.
he really did, yeah.
Oh, and then you say you have a friend with a girlfriend whose whole family just died?
Yeah.
Whoa, crazy.
Oh, and that guy's an asshole? And he has
Oh.
a friend who's also an asshole?
Whoa.
And I only need to hang out with him for, I don't know, like a year.
Okay.
Okay.
Pieces are coming together for old Pele.
Right, so yeah, we do get the allusions to like Norse mythology
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah.
So like right off the bat, when they actually like get into the village, one of the first people that Pele introduces them to is like an older guy whose name I didn't catch.
Father Odd.
Father Odd. That's right. I was like, he had a weird name. Literally, it was odd.
Yeah.
No, but he's like wearing a frock. They say they like notice his outfit, and he says it's in respect of Ymir and the hermaphrodite aspect of nature, which is great. But Ymir is a primordial being in Norse myth.
Oh, okay.
So like right off the bat, we're like, okay, we got some Norse gods, we got some like nature gods going on. This all makes sense. And then we get the Rotvolta, which is the sacred tree.
Oh.
That's what they call it.
That's right, yeah.
It's the one that Mark urinates on.
Right.
It literally means like a felled tree, like a tree that like fall over and it still has all of its roots coming out of it. I couldn't find any like specific like significance to Rotvolta being sacred in and of itself, but like trees in general are very sacred.
Yeah, I would just think of like the tree of life.
Well, and there's the world tree,
The
Yggdrasil.
world tree.
Yeah.
What's
world
the one
tree.
that Odin hangs from for?
That's-
9 days.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
That's Yggdrasil.
All right.
Yeah. Speaking of trees, when they're getting burned, Ingmar and Ulf take from the yew tree, feel no pain. Take from the yew tree, feel no fear. And traditionally, Yggdrasil it's been interpreted as an ash tree, but like more recently scholars have started to argue that like a better translation is a yew tree.
I just wonder, when they say take from the yew tree, feel no fear, feel no pain, I'm wondering if that is like a promise or just like a wish. Just like, I hope that this is not
everybody
painful
starts
for you.
because it looks painful. We see Ulf start to
scream pretty quickly, although I actually don't remember Ingmar screaming. I remember the other one though.
Yeah, since this movie also drew on some other cultural references from like different types of cultures.
Oh yeah,
and like different pagan traditions.
It's all an amalgamation.
Yeah, there is like Celtic and Roman stories about people choosing to commit suicide by yew poisoning rather than like succumb to their enemies. So like my thought on what you were saying about it being like a wish is that like maybe the wish is like, this might poison you and you might die from it before the flames get you.
Right,
and that being maybe the wish, because I don't know that it would stop you from feeling pain or fear. I think it might just kill you.
Right, yeah. And again, just like hope this helps.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, obviously, we'll talk about it, like, the Orga have, like, extensive knowledge and access to different kinds of drugs.
Yeah.
And, like, mind-altering substances. Like, you can't get them something, like, for pain? I don't know.
But no, as you said, with Yggdrasil, Odin hung from it from 9 days. And as we've already talked about, it's been 90 years since the last great feast and 90 years before our next. And then, like, they surrender 9 human lives. 4 new bloods, 4 from Orga, and 1 to be chosen by the queen. And then, of course, the other thing with the 9s is how the aging works.
Yes.
They're child until 18, which is spring. They pilgrimage between 18 and 36, which is summer.
Yeah. It's kind of like a little kind of rumspringa.
I know,
thing.
it's cute. It's cute. Yeah. Just going to go out there and see some new blood to maybe sacrifice or make a make
or bring back. Yeah.
36 to 54 is fall,
yes.
their working age. And 54 to 72 is when you become a mentor, which is winter.
Yeah.
And then you're killed after 72.
Right.
And like Pele literally actually does tell them that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess in a way he does kind of warn them about that stupid.
Yeah, but they like because they think he's joking.
They think he's joking, but Pele is very honest and earnest. Like
that's
the
true,
whole.
Yeah.
Oh, I also saw as like a side note, some people were wondering about what birthday we think Danny is celebrating.
Oh yeah,
because like Pele, we know he has to be between 18 and 36 because he's on his pilgrimage.
Right, and I think like if they're PhD candidates, they're probably
30-ish?
in their 30s. Yeah.
Some people were positing that perhaps this is Danny's 27th birthday.
Ooh.
Because that would put her right in between 18, which is spring, and 36, which is summer, aka midsummer age.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course, yes. Also, because the life expectancy is 72, right? But like this thing, this feast or whatever is exactly happening every 90 years. 72 plus 18 is 90.
I actually didn't make that connection before. You're right. Yeah. It's interesting because that means nobody is living through more than one of these.
Exactly. Or someone could go their entire lifetime and never see one.
Yeah.
Depending. Yeah.
Interesting. I never thought about that. But yeah, just to cover why it's important in Norse mythology, along with the number 3, Yggdrasil has 3 roots and supports 9 realms or worlds. Right. Midgard being one of them.
Asgard being another. I know that one.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are just like...
There's Jotunheim, there's Niflheim.
They're so Norse.
I don't know them. But yeah, there are also just a lot of stories, a lot of myths where, like you said, Odin hangs himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days to reach this like awakened state. Heimdall, who like guards the Bifrost, he had 9 mothers. There's like lots of tales where feasts last 9 days or where there are 9 sacrifices. During Ragnarok, the end of times, Thor kills the Midgard serpent and then
takes 9 steps
and stumbles to his dies. Yep. And so it's like this number that appears at like really important like turning points. Yeah. And that's also sort of linked to like magic and spiritual awakening.
Right. Well, the number 9, especially like in numerology, kind of represents the end of the cycle. Right? Because especially in numerology, like it really is about like single digit numbers, right?
Yeah,
and so 9 being, the biggest one.
Yeah. Okay. Should we talk about runes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because they specifically talk about it being the Elder Futhark alphabet, which is the oldest form of runic alphabets.
Wow. Okay.
Used in Scandinavia from the 2nd to 10th centuries, so it's real old.
That's old. Yep.
And then in around the 8th century, it was simplified to Younger Futhark, which is specifically what Josh assumes it is. He asks, "Is this Younger Futhark?" Yeah. That's why we know it is, because then Pele says it's older.
Yeah.
Though the Younger Futhark is the one that was used in the Viking Age and then declined around the time that Sweden started to get like Christianized.
Yeah.
But we hear most about it when we're talking about like the Ruby Radar.
Yes.
Is that how they called it in them?
That's what they say. They call it the
Ruby
Ruby
Ra.
Radar. Yeah.
I don't know what that translates to.
Neither do
If
I.
you try to Google it, you just get stuff about Midsommar.
Yeah, right.
But
So it's probably not real.
yeah. But they talk about it being emotional sheet music, which is an interesting way to talk about it.
Poetic, yeah.
But each runic letter stands for one of the 16 effects, which are graded from most holy to most unholy. One, for example, is about grief. This, if I am Josh, by the way,
Yeah.
is a sign that something is going on that's fishy. 16 effects. There are 16 letters in the younger version of the runic alphabet, not the older one. But according to Pele, they're using the older one. So it's like, which alphabet are we using? Are we using them both?
Right.
That's just a little teaser. I want to talk about some of the actual specific runes that we see.
Right. Yep. We do see several.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is based on me looking at the runic alphabet and what it represented and sort of determining it on my own, looking at what other people have put together about this movie and their own theories, and then also looking at a lot of like modern divination practices and like modern interpretations of the runes, because Ari Aster could have just as easily been working with modern divination as he was with older. A big one is the rune that Christian is dressed in before the like sex ritual. It's kind of like a
you
T.
have, like,
It's like a
one-
little arrow that points up. It refers to the god Tyr and like invokes masculine energy.
That tracks. Yeah.
Noticeably, Tyr is also the god who like sacrifices his hand so that they can bind the wolf Fenrir.
Oh.
So it's also a symbol of like sacrifice of the good for the many.
Yeah, for the many, right?
We're going to come back to Christian and Tyr. Another really prominent one in Olga is the Oldal or Othala rune, which is kind of like, it's like a diamond with two little tails on the bottom, maybe a sideways fish. Or a facing upward fish, I mean.
That one. They sit at a table in that
It's
shape.
the one that they sit in the table in that shape.
What's up with that one?
It's like a rune for like heritage or homeland, inheritance. And like that includes like spiritual inheritance, communal
Birthright.
prosperity,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So it makes sense that that's something that Holga is using a lot of. Danny's dress, when she gets her own little dress, I guess like everybody in this place seems to get their own little runes on their own little dresses, their own little outfits, which is interesting. And so when they give Danny one, it features the Reido, which kind of looks like an R.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's about journeys and perspective and the cycle of life. However, it's like on its side, or it's reversed, something like that.
Ooh.
Somebody pointed that out.
Yeah.
Which so it's like, is her path currently blocked? Is she not on the right journey? Is it the journey from her past that wasn't right, and now she's getting on to the right journey? We don't know.
Right.
We don't know. And then she also has an inverted dagas, which is kind of like an hourglass shape. And that means like day or dawn.
Kind of
and sort of like,
yeah.
yeah, and it's like the end of a cycle and a new beginning. So she has a lot of stuff about cycles
the
and
number
journeys.
9.
Though again, it's on its side.
Right.
So it's like,
Kind of reversed.
yeah, so it's like, this isn't a new beginning. You're stuck. This
Yeah.
is like hopelessness.
Yeah.
Or it could just be that like her world is kind of getting turned on its head. She's like getting a new understanding of the cycle because everything's kind of reversed for her.
Yeah.
And then the other big one that I thought was interesting was the symbol in the temple when they
Yeah.
burn it down.
Yeah.
It seems to be binding together two runes. One, which I saw called either Gifu or Gebu, which is like an X, and Ingwaz, which is like a diamond shape. And so that former one, Gifu, Gebu, it means like generosity or gift.
Yeah.
And the latter is maybe like a fertility symbol or a symbol of spring.
Living.
Because it's based on the god Ing.
Yep.
So in other words, the sacrifices are like giving the gift of their lives to bring in new plant growth after winter.
And I feel like it's worth mentioning that this idea of like sacrificing like a life for like your greater community or like, you know, a successful harvest or to survive through the winter is like not just Norse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, yeah. I mean, the idea of there being sacrifices in general is like kind of debatable.
exactly. Yeah.
And I'll talk more about the Atstupa in general. But these are just the interpretations of the runes. Because the other big rune that we see, actually, and this is when we're going to start getting a little bit more into Josh being kind of the dummy, is that the stone at the Atstupa that the woman kind of puts her bloody hands over.
Yeah. That was so cool.
Yeah.
And like the way that like her head is so low down, it almost looks like she doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
That's a good part.
yeah.
So there's one rune that comes up 4 times, which is that same one that I talked about, which means like gift.
Okay.
And so somebody on Reddit argued that those 4 represent the 4 Hargans who are to be sacrificed. So in order from top left to bottom right, according to this Reddit, we see all of the sacrifices that are going to come. So we have the gift. We have an inverted algiz, which when it's upright, it means like courage and instinct. So this person was arguing that when it's inverted, it means like you don't have instinct, you don't have courage, you're a fool. So it's Josh. Another gift, Redo, which is that journey one, twice in a row. And they were like, that's Simon and Connie, who are like these travelers.
Right, they are.
And I'm like, aren't they all travelers? But okay.
Well, yeah.
And then we see the Tiwaz, which is that rune that Christian wears. So obviously that's Christian. And then another one of the gifts. And then our last one is Perthro, which is like destiny or mysteries. And they were arguing that it's like Josh is the seeker of knowledge. He's going to find all of these mysteries or whatever. So it's like all of these runes are representing our 9 sacrifices. Is the argument being made that the Stupa tells us right there at the beginning what it all is.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I completely agree with it, because the other way you can look at it is just sort of like, it's just kind of the end of a cycle. It's like the onset of death, the giving of oneself as a gift. So it's like a representation of the Stupa, not necessarily the 9 sacrifices. And it's like 9 because that's a significant number.
Very significant.
And it's just kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because there's the other theory that all of these runes are actually gibberish. Like, none of it actually means anything. Like, you can't actually read these runes. Like, the runes are real, but set up in this way, they don't mean anything. So it's just sort of like, this isn't actually ancient traditions being passed down. It's a cult
Or they,
co-opting ancient symbols.
Or they mean something to them.
But that they made up.
Yeah, because what does Pele say? Like, oh yeah, we teach the runic alphabet. So it's like, well, maybe they're teaching their own
way.
version. Yeah.
But it still means that they're co-opting this old ancient thing and sort of making their own thing and sort of like using it aesthetically without a real like understanding maybe.
Yeah.
And I just kind of feel like if maybe Josh didn't have his head up his ass, he might have noticed some of these things.
He also literally named the alphabet.
I know, he
correctly.
knew. Yeah.
So yeah, Josh really should have put 2 and 2 together on that one.
The other reason he should have put 2 and 2 together is because the Stupa
Yes.
is not historically a thing.
Yeah.
And like people who know anything know that. Kind of like people who know about this sort of thing know that a stupa is like not, it's, the concept doesn't show up in Sweden before the 17th century. And it's by way of an old Icelandic saga. And like supposedly it was practiced in prehistoric times, but like it doesn't show up in prehistoric times. There are, because of that story, a bunch of like precipices in Sweden that are named after the concept. But there's like no evidence that it actually happened there. It was just sort of like, oh, wasn't that story really fun? Let's name this after that, you know? And it's like not even the same thing in the story. It's like the family elders killing themselves because they're like a really miserly family and they don't want to spend any of their money on caretaking. So it's like kind of like this funny sort of story.
That's hilarious.
And like there honestly isn't a lot of evidence in any society, in any culture, of there being like genocide rituals like this.
Right.
Of killing the, like if there are, it would have been in cases of extreme famine. Otherwise, it just didn't really happen. And I just feel like Josh would have known that.
Right.
There's another thing that didn't really happen, but Josh didn't get a chance to see this one, so I'll let it slide, which is the Blood Eagle.
The Blood Eagle, yeah. Which, the first time I saw that, I actually didn't know that it had a name.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I never caught on to, like, what they were calling it, like, until this last...
a bit of an interest in Vikings, so.
Oh, yeah, well,
I was familiar with it.
They're interesting. But, like, when I first saw that, like, that was, you know, for me, as a fan of the genre, just like, yes!
I mean, it is pretty, especially since it looks like the lungs are still breathing, which, like, couldn't possibly be.
It's not
possible. It's because he's
yeah.
fucking tripping balls or whatever.
Right. I like to think that, you know, maybe this Midsommar takes place in a universe in which
Blood Eagles did happen.
Are real. Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to know about where they come up in Norse literature?
Let me guess. Nowhere.
No, there are 2 instances.
Oh, 2? Okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, I guess some debate if it was like historical or it was a literary invention, but it sounds like it was probably a literary invention. But there are 2 instances in like Norse literature that involve the ritual killing of a nobleman in retaliation for the murder of a father. Like, they both have that theme. There was Halfdan Longleg, who was a prince who killed a man and then was blood-eagled by that man's son. And then there's the epics about Ragnar Lothbrok, which if you've seen the show Vikings on History Channel, that's who it's about.
Okay.
But Ivar the Boneless, or maybe Bjorn, or maybe one of Ragnar's other sons, or maybe all of his sons, torture this king, Ela, in retaliation for murdering their father, Ragnar Lothbrok. And, like, all of the historical sources suggest that Ayla actually just died in battle. Like, he probably died in fucking battle.
Seems the most likely.
Yeah. Some scholars...
Or the infection that set in after battle.
Yeah. It seems likely. No, but yeah, some scholars are trying to be like, well, both are kind of accurate. in that the depiction of a blood eagle is actually a mistranslation by later Christians who didn't really understand how like kennings work in Norse stories.
How what works?
Kennings, where they can be kind of like, basically kind of like a metaphor. Just going to the Oxford Dictionary, it's a compound expression in Old English and Old Norse poetry with metaphorical meaning. For example, an oar steed would be a ship.
Oh.
Right?
Like an iron snake is like the train.
Yes.
Got it.
Except for they wouldn't have trains, but yes.
But yeah.
Yeah. So the thought was that maybe later Christians were just like, what's a kenning? And they saw a description of King Aela dead, lying face down on the battlefield, and his dead body being like picked apart by carrion birds. And like they sort of misinterpreted it and changed it to something that honestly sounds very like Christian martyry, getting that tortured to death sort of thing,
Yeah.
It's like, it's a very Christian thing. It doesn't feel very Norse.
Yeah, that does happen to Simon, and I do think that it is, I mean, we don't really get to see Mark's fate, or Josh's for that matter.
Yeah,
but
we
like,
don't know exactly how they died.
Like...
We don't see any of the deaths, really.
No, not really. Yeah.
they happen
I
off
guess
screen.
Except Christians.
Which is why this isn't a slasher.
Right.
We don't see the deaths.
Yeah. I would think that, like, probably that death of Simon's is, like, probably the worst, right?
Yeah.
Especially if we are,
if he
like,
wasn't already dead, yeah.
supposed to meant to believe that he's still alive or something.
Yeah. But it seems like, I mean, they're breaking along the spinal cord.
Right.
Breaking the ribs.
Yeah.
I gotta imagine if you don't die immediately, you're losing a lot of, like, nerves.
Exactly. And blood.
Yeah, you're gonna die really quickly.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't sound like it would actually be torture. That just sounds like you'd fucking die.
Yeah. It was a cool scene, though. Yeah.
Okay, two last things, which are like the folktales. So just to give you the story from the movie, it was here that the Black One lured the youths of Horga to the grass and seduced them into dance. Once they began, they could not stop, and they danced themselves to death. Now, in life-holding defiance of the Black One, we dance until we fall, and she who survives last will be crowned for her stamina. Okay, so this is another one of those things that, like, maybe Josh could have picked up on, which is that the May Queen is a very British tradition. It is not Swedish.
Right, okay.
It has no association with, like, Swedish summer festivals at all.
Wow. Yeah, he should have known that.
But, I mean, it's possible that, like, that maybe they picked up on the May Queen tradition during, Christianization or whatever, that it, like, came in later or something. But still, as Josh, as an anthropologist, I would have been like, oh, how long have you been doing a May Queen? I would have had questions about it.
Right, and then we do actually get to see all those pictures of past
They go
May
back
Queens.
for a while.
There's a lot of May Queens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maypoles in particular are kind of like debated in terms of the origin.
Okay.
Something like pagan Germanic.
Yeah.
Might be a reference to the Axis Mundi, the world's axis, or to symbolize sacred trees, which is big in Norse mythology. But specifically, there is something called Hergolotten, or the Horga song, which is a Swedish folk song about a community near Horgaberget, or Horga Mountain. Like, these are real places.
Yeah, they are. Yep.
Yep. And according to myth, the devil, disguised as a fiddler, because that's one of his favorite disguises.
He loves to fiddle. Yeah.
He really does.
Yeah.
He convinced young people to dance until they died of exhaustion. Yeah. Like, this is a folktale that exists.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of a really scary song because it's from the perspective of, like, the people dancing.
Oh, God.
And so, like, some of the people are like, oh, God, he has cloven feet and we can't stop dancing. It's, like, kind of scary. Yeah, it's a good. So, like, that was obviously... Like, Ari Aster was very familiar with that when he did this. Like, it's literally the story.
Oh, that he and whoever was on his team, like, did their research.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that one was a very obvious one. That one's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good. But that's what I was saying about that imagery of Pele on the tapestry in the beginning where he seems to be playing a flute and leading them in.
Yeah.
This is the other thing it made me think of. Okay, so are we going to talk about the bear?
Tell me about that fucking bear.
I love that we don't see the bear at first. We hear Simon say, so we're just going to ignore the bear then? And Ingmar's like, it's a bear. And that's like what we get about the bear. And then we finally see the bear in this tiny cage.
Yeah, and then we see the bear in that tiny little cage. I'm like, that bear isn't too small of a cage.
Yeah, but it's going to die anyway, so I guess they don't really care. Yeah. But no, I was curious if you knew about the origin of the word bear.
Yeah, I think I learned this like a million years ago from a Stuff You Should Know.
Oh.
And I don't remember what the episode was about, but yeah, like they were talking about word magic.
Yeah.
And you don't actually say the word bear.
Because it'll draw a bear to you.
And then that bear's like going to fuck up everything and it'll be your fault. So you say what like would have been like the word for brown.
Yeah, that's where the word bear comes from.
Yeah.
Like the Germanic word for brown.
Because like, what is like Ursa? Is that bear.
Well, they think that maybe in the like Proto-Indo-European it was going to be like Arctos or something
else,
like that,
yeah.
but that's where they got to like Ursa and things like that. So like some branches of language did still say bear, and then other branches like Germanic, which is where we got a lot of English from, went with brown, which was like bar, which then became bear.
Yep.
And also Swedish, Björn is also from brown.
Yeah.
There are other languages where that have like different ways of saying bear that are like furry one or like honey eater or something, you know. But yeah, that whole thing about not speaking the name was the first. It always made me laugh watching Midsommar when they're like, "So are we just gonna ignore the bear?" And they're just like, "Yeah, you're supposed to ignore the bear. You're not supposed to say the bear. You're not supposed to summon the bear."
A gigantic bear. Anyway,
but I was curious. I was like, okay, but what about bears specifically in Swedish, like Norse mythology? What do we got here?
And what I was also wondering is like, are there bears in Sweden?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess why not?
Brown bears.
Why not?
Brown bears. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. There's bears.
but they don't appear in Norse mythology very often. Like sometimes Thor and Odin would like disguise themselves as bears to walk among humans, but that's like they just don't really come up.
Okay.
They are more common in like folk tales because there'll be stories about bears who are like become humans or like mating with humans, shape-shifting into bears. And also the thing with like mating with humans, I was like, oh, like Christian was brought in to mate with. Oh, interesting. And like they're also sometimes like seen as like maybe they were like prior to humans, like what humans came from was maybe bears, and so they're like this more primordial nature and maybe like this kind of fury of nature. They also come up with, you're probably familiar with berserkers.
Yes.
Yeah, they're bear warriors. I mean, there were a number of different warriors like that who would take different tribal animals,
and
but
different,
berserkers.
like, skins.
Berserkers specifically were the bear warriors, and they're the ones that we know the most for some reason.
Do you know what else they did?
What?
Took mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
They would like take psychedelic mushrooms before they went into battle, or at least that's what I heard.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They definitely entered some sort of state of frenzy in some way.
Yeah.
To enter into battle wearing their bear pelts, and like this in combination with that tear rune that I was talking about that Christian wears, where he's associated with these bear warriors. He's associated with this god of war and victory. I just find that really interesting because I'm not really sure what that connection's supposed to be. Other than like he's supposed to symbolize, because he is Christianity in the outside world or whatever,
right?
That they're like pushing him up as like this big scary warrior that they're going to overcome.
Yeah,
I don't know.
What it makes me think of, I think this is like our third reference to Cabin in the Woods, is like when they make Jules the whore. Yeah, like they make her that, right? It's almost like they're like, you need to fit this type for us. Yeah, and we're gonna like make you fit. Yeah, the best we can.
Yeah, because Christian isn't a very good fit. Though it is. I also wrote down what the holy person speaks over Christian when he's dressed as a bear, because it's mighty and dreadful beast. They don't say bear; they say beast. Yep. With you, we purge our most unholy affects. Yeah. We banish you now to the deepest recesses, where you may reflect on your wickedness. And it's like they're burning this bear symbolically to burn. Like, yes, the predators and like the outsiders and stuff, but also like their own worst impulses and their own sins.
Yeah, I was going to use the word sins, even though I don't know if that would be...
Exactly, they say our own worst impulses is how they word it. Our wickedness. Yeah. So yeah, my thoughts on the bear are not conclusive, but...
I also, like, am curious, is like, how did you acquire that bear?
I don't know. I guess I just
because the first time we see it, it's just in that way too small of a cage,
There's the thing about... It's just a moment in passing where I think Pele says when they become laborers, workers, their job is chosen based on, like, aptitude that they show as children. Yes. Which, sucks. But I wonder if there are kids who are just like really kind of like aggressive warrior types, and they're like, one day you're gonna hunt a bear. They're ready. Yeah. You know, they just have like hunters that go out and hunt the bears.
Or that's like part of their job. You know, like, well, we only need a bear about once a year.
So the rest of the time you'll hunt other food.
They need it every 90? I still don't
fully
understand.
We don't know. Though it's interesting because we see them cutting up the bear, and he's explaining to a group of children how to properly butcher a bear and get the intestine out without it like exploding or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, is that just normal butchering because they're going to eat bears or other animals?
I mean,
or is it in preparation for this ritual happening a lot?
Oh, like, why not both?
Why not both?
It's like they're probably like cutting out so they can like probably use whatever they can from the bear, the meat, the bone, like whatever they can use from the bear, and like use the skin as like a suit, you know?
Right. Yeah, because I mean, those kids are not going to be, if this only happens every 90 years.
That's true.
Those kids aren't going to get it again.
If like they need to learn, because again, if this thing happens every 90 years,
they need to pass it down.
Like they need to pass down that knowledge.
I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, that's the extent of my sort of Norse history and stuff. Though I guess my main takeaway from it was just sort of like, there were red flags here that Josh could have seen.
Yeah.
Like the stupid not being historical, the May Queen, why they're using both alphabets at different times. Like so much of it feels very like aesthetic rather than actual
Functional.
tradition. Yeah, functional. Yeah. And I think that becomes even more apparent when we start talking about them as like a white supremacist cult.
Yeah.
So I think that's just something to keep in mind going forward.
Absolutely.
Since we were just talking about the berserkers and why mushrooms might be important,
right?
Let's start talking about some like drug use.
Yeah, there's a lot of drug use in this film, right? When they're in the U.S. and when they get to Sweden, right? Like in that first kind of half hour, we see Danny take an Ativan, which is like, yeah, girl. If there was ever an appropriate time to take an Ativan, like, this is the time.
I know. And then did she not bring them with her on her trip? Because then she, like, does not take them. She, like, borrows sleeping pills, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I do find that as an interesting connection between her and Josh, that he's the one that she goes to borrow sleeping pills.
Right.
I don't know why. I haven't figured out why that is sort of poking at my brain. Just something about their relationship being one that doesn't seem to exist at all.
Yeah.
Other than in these moments where she borrows a sleeping... Like, do they talk? They don't really talk at all other than that. I don't know. I don't have anything to say about it.
I don't know if you noticed, but when she goes to, is it Christian's apartment where all the guys are there? When Christian comes up, he's like, hey, she's coming. There's actually a bong right next to Pele.
Oh, is there?
There's a bong right next to him. Yeah.
I didn't notice. Yeah, but that feels right.
But, like, I don't know if it's Pele's. I don't know if it's Mark's. Yeah, I don't know. And then, yeah, obviously, like, there's a lot of mushrooms in here, too, right? Like, they drink the mushroom tea, like, the minute they get there.
I know, immediately. I understand her being like, I'd like to get settled in first.
And reorient,
rather than take these mushrooms and then accidentally fall asleep in the middle of the forest.
Or freak the fuck out in the middle of a forest. Yeah.
Like, she loses the rest of that day and wakes up and is like, is it tomorrow?
Yeah. I liked that. Is it tomorrow? I was like, well, from the perspective of yesterday. Yeah. So there's those mushrooms, and then of course before the dance competition they all drink a thing,
more tea,
and so like we can pretty well surmise that there's something psychedelic in there, probably mushrooms.
Yeah, I do think it was interesting that when they asked Pele like how Harga supports itself, he's like lumber, linens, water power plants, homeopathics. Yeah, he's just sort of like casually like. We got those too.
And psychedelic mushrooms is fine. Yeah, and then like same when that woman is kind of trying to get Christian to drink that thing, you know, and he's like, I'm good. I'm afraid I'm going to have a bad trip. And she's like, you won't.
Yeah.
And then of course that like weird thing that like gets blown into
whatever that is. That seems to be like a paralytic or maybe that's something different that he gets later that paralyzes him. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's just like really a lot going on. And as we'll talk about momentarily, using drugs and like especially as a way to like alter somebody's state is like a tried and true cult tactic.
Yeah. They literally, when she gives the drink to Christian and he's like trying to not take it, she says that it has something that breaks down defenses and opens you for the influence. And it's like, you're just going to drink that now?
And he's like, okay.
God, Christian, because he can't fucking say no.
No, he cannot.
And I do think it's significant that even from the beginning, when Danny enters these altered states, she starts to see herself sort of merging with nature.
Yeah. Did that freak you out, by the way?
I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
It's my least favorite part of this movie. The fucking grass growing out of the... my fucking God, I hate it.
Made me think about Annihilation and character.
That's my least favorite movie in the world.
See, that's unfortunate because I think it would be a fun one for us to do.
Did you see? Okay, so there was a lot of debate when this movie originally came out about whether or not Christian is raped. People had like a surprising amount to say about this.
Wow, okay.
And it is unclear. Christian is brought into, I think he talks to Siv again, where Siv's like, you're an ideal astrological match for Maya.
Yeah. And then he's like, I think she put pubic hair in my food.
Yeah, but we don't know what answer
like,
he gives.
That sounds like Maya.
Yeah.
It's like totally brushing it
like the scene skips ahead, so we don't actually know if he agrees to it or not.
Right.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But then they definitely drug him before it he is tripping balls when it actually does finally happen.
Yeah, and then like the other woman kind of like surrounding them, like one of them gets closer.
He's flipping out.
He like jumps very noticeably.
So it's interesting because right before he takes the drink, he does look over at Maya in a way that it seems like he knows that something is about to happen here.
Right.
So like there's an extent to which, I don't know, the consent is really unclear.
Yeah.
And like that seems to happen a lot, not just through drug use, but just sort of like their idea of like consent, and like how Ingmar refers to the whole love spell thing as a love story. That he's like, yeah, it's a love story. This girl bewitched this man. You know, which is like, of course you think that, Ingmar. God. And then Pele talks about how his community is one that doesn't bicker over what is theirs and not theirs, which I was just like, I don't know. In the context of some of this other stuff, I'm a little concerned about.
Yeah.
And like, but then it's like how the elders have to approve who mates because of the bloodlines.
Yes, yeah.
And like how sometimes we invite outside people.
Right.
It's just sort of like the boundaries here are bad. The consent is not happening.
It's not there, yeah.
I mean, Pele's kiss was not consensual.
No.
She was in a very altered state in that one.
Yeah, and also like Dany being sort of coerced into taking that drink before like the May Queen dance. You know? It's like everybody's doing it. You know? And so she just does it, right, without really thinking about it.
Somebody talked about the reason why they do that sort of like breathe thing is to like check to make sure people drank it.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what? I got that actually tracks. So it's an inhale, then an exhale?
I think it's an exhale and then an inhale, actually. Yeah, no, it's an exhale then an inhale.
I also
because it's out with the old, in with the new.
Oh, I see. To see if people actually drink it, yes. But I also kind of wonder, like, I mean, just doing it once isn't really going to do anything, but like kind of using the manipulation of your breath to reach an altered state.
Yeah.
Like to hyperventilate.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Because when she goes later, when she has that panic attack after seeing Christian with another woman.
Yeah.
All the other women start to sort of join her in her panic attack, and they all start mimicking this like hyperventilation with each other.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and it gets faster and faster.
Yeah, and it does seem very like they are like constricting their like oxygen flow.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so there's just like a ton of drugs in this movie.
Yeah.
What else there's a ton of is mirrors in this movie.
I didn't pick up on these. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this.
I actually was a little confused as to what function it serves, especially in like the first part of the movie when we're still in the US. But we see Christian in the mirror when Dany confronts him about like not telling her about Sweden.
Yeah,
right? And
we're
like
seeing him through the mirror.
And I think it does also like just functionally help.
Because then we can see both
to
people.
Set up the shot. Be like, we can see both of them, you know, that kind of thing. And then,
but it also creates like distance between them.
Yeah. And then it happens again in the very next scene where Christian and Dany are both seen in the mirror when they walk in and like are talking to Christian's friends. Like they're both in the mirror at first, and then they kind of pass that threshold, and you can actually see them in there. Yeah. So, but then when Josh gets like bludgeoned after he's taking pictures of the Ruby Rotter with the person who's wearing Mark's face, like we see that figure walking towards Josh through like the reflection of like the window on the other side.
We do, yeah, because then he's like, Mark, what
he
are you
sees
doing?
it and he thinks it's Mark for a second, and then he realizes that
it's very much not Mark.
Yeah. But other than that, the mirrors, like the literal mirror, stops when they get to Sweden.
Which there's the one.
Oh, when she's tripping.
When she has her bad trip,
yeah.
And they bring up family.
Yeah.
Just the word family triggers her, and she starts to have a panic attack. Doesn't she go and find a bathroom with a mirror?
Yeah, and she finds a mirror and then, like, has the jump scare of seeing, like, her sister with that mask on again. So, you're right. But, like, once they really get settled into Orga, the mirrors kind of go away. There's other kinds of reflections, but mirrors themselves go away.
Interesting.
I almost wonder, like, if those mirrors represent, like, Western individualism.
Yeah.
And, like,
kind of a separation from each other.
Yeah, and, like,
not being able to actually,
self-obsession.
yeah, and not being able to actually touch each other
Yeah.
and be in community with each other. Being like... Yeah.
Yeah, individualism versus like communalism.
Yeah.
But
that's interesting.
Then like the mirrors themselves stop. But like there's other things that kind of function as mirrors that like show another kind of reflection, right? Like the tapestries, right? So like Christian gets seated literally right in front of the image of a bear on fire.
Yes!
Right? Like reflecting like this is you.
Yeah.
Really, really soon. This is gonna be you.
By the way, did you look up any of the homes in Helsingland that those places are based on?
No.
Because they're all those paintings and all those like in all over Harga that are in all those buildings. They're based on the decorated farmhouses of Helsingland from like the 19th century, and they have like biblical motifs and like little funny stories and like cautionary tales and lots of like ribbons and flowers, and they're just really cool.
Yeah,
they're just worth looking at pictures of. Probably they're really cool in person too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we do, if you really do look at the murals and the art throughout, like
Yeah.
on their buildings, you know, like you do see, you know, foreshadowing and like
Yeah.
reflections on what's going on already. And like there, we do get the scan of the banner, which shows the entire saga of Maya like bewitching Christian. And what I really like was really interested to me is that we scan and like see that story via the tapestry from right to left.
We do. Because before we recorded, you asked me whether
Yeah.
the runic alphabet was read right to left or left to right.
Yeah.
And
I was like, why is everything else seems to be
left to right?
Left to right, but
and I
this
don't know why
one-
that was. It's really weird.
You know what? Mirror image.
Mirror image.
And then, of
that's
cour-
true. Actually, we don't even know how it's going to be hung up. We might have
Right,
been
well-
seeing it from the back.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, like it's kind of the way it just kind of scans.
Yeah.
Because like the characters are walking through the field, and like we kind of
Yeah.
get that in the shot, and it just kind of it just moves.
Because
along
are
as
they
the
even
characters
actually
are
going
moving.
out to it on the other side?
Yeah.
So we might just actually, literally be getting the mirror inverse version of it.
Right. And then did you also notice that this movie does your favorite thing?
The fucking upside down
The
shot.
fucking upside down shot, right?
Yeah.
To, you know,
Ooh, we're entering a new world.
Right.
We're disoriented. Everything's upside down.
exactly. to
I get it.
to disorient the audience, which, I mean, honestly, the upside down shot is very disorienting.
Yeah.
It does its job. Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, like, kind of like we are entering like this different realm, right? Like
we're
we've
going
gone,
into the underworld.
We've gone through the looking glass, you know? Yeah.
all of that stuff. It did actually make me think of being a good, entering a different world. How Ari Aster talked about. He literally called this movie a Wizard of Oz for perverts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is interesting.
perverts.
And one of the things that really stands out.
Wizard of Oz is the Wizard of Oz for perverts.
So is the book, but
oh my gosh, yes. Ugh.
but they do a kind of a similar palette transition as Wizard of Oz does, where like, and it happens sort of with that upside down shot,
Yeah.
where before everything's kind of like gray and dark, and it's
Very
all
dark.
winter.
Yeah.
Even when it's summer, everything is still like gray and dark
Yeah.
until we get to Harga,
Yeah.
when it's like all of these bright, beautiful colors
Yeah.
and flowers, and everything's wonderful.
And it's light like
And it's
22 hours a day.
And it's like
Yeah.
specifically a bunch of like yellow flowers that they're sort of walking along, just like the yellow brick road.
Oh, yeah.
And
Huh.
then there are some things, I mean, I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, Christian is kind of the cowardly lion. He hates confrontation. And when he ends up in that bear suit, he kind of just looks like the cowardly lion.
Right. Although, like, it's my understanding that he is, like, sedated.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. That he...
No, in terms of him lacking courage, I just meant like his general lack of inability to confront anything.
Yeah.
Not that specific instance.
Yeah. Just in general. Yeah.
But the imagery of him in it felt very cowardly lion.
Truly. Yeah. Yeah.
Which then, like, Mark as the scarecrow, his skin is stuffed with straw in the end.
This is true.
So it's
Yep.
like, okay.
He's the scarecrow.
But then
Yep.
that makes Josh the Tin Man.
Who's looking for a heart?
Yeah, and I was like, because he's really heartless in his pursuit of knowledge,
Yeah.
maybe. He's, like, very academically driven and isn't really... Like, he doesn't warn people about the Outstupa. Like, he doesn't have a lot of, like... What people does he care about in his life? Does he have love in his life? We don't know.
Yeah.
He's not, like, looking to seduce women like Mark is, even, So he is kind of heartless, maybe, in that sense, but that's
Yeah.
the weaker one.
Yeah.
But it is just sort of, I don't know. I was just thinking about it with the upside down shot, that there is something kind of like entering Oz.
Right. Yeah. We're not in Kansas anymore. Yep,
Yeah.
Totally.
But the other place we might be in is a white supremacist cult.
Yeah, 1,000%. So we've been talking about the cult stuff this whole time, and that's wonderful. Like the separation of children from their parents, like the kind of communal living.
Yeah.
There's really strict roles associated with age, which we already talked about.
And also with labor, maybe, because kids are assigned when they're young what job they're going to have when they're older.
Yeah, and then we also, I don't ever hear or like see it explicitly stated, but there does seem to kind of be like a gender divide.
Right.
Like,
All the women seem to be cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And Danny is like, go be with the women in the
Yeah.
kitchen and cook as well.
Yeah, they don't like say that,
Yeah.
outright, but it's there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there do seem to be like men and women in positions of power, because we see Civ and
Yeah,
we
we have
see
the
Father.
elders, yeah.
Where it's like it's men and women, but there is some sort of gender divide happening.
Right. And we talked about like the use of numerology and runes as like being symbolically significant, possibly being like bastardized,
Yeah, being more of an aesthetic thing.
And,
which
they
is
do.
very Nazi and white supremacist symbols. They
Yep.
took a bunch of runes and just put them to their own. You're going to say all of this.
I am. Yeah. So, shut up. No. I'm kidding. They have a belief structure as well as a scripture. of some kind, you know.
That was the other thing I was going to bring up about the Ruby Rider. I think Civ sort of reads out of it, but she like kind of sings it. And it's like, it's their random drawings that are then interpreted into runes, which are then called emotional sheet music. So I'm like, how is she even reading this? Is that just gibberish? What is she saying?
Right. And that's the thing is like the scripture is very heavily controlled by the elders.
Right.
Right. It's like the oracle does whatever the oracle
Whatever
does.
the fuck he does.
But with their unclouded judgment. Right.
Yes.
But
it still needs to be interpreted by
the elders.
And so whatever the elders say goes.
So this is actually something that is very not culty, is that like there doesn't seem to be one person in charge.
I was thinking about that. There's no like charismatic leader.
It seems to be
anything.
like more of an oligarchy.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is, yeah, I mean, they've talked about how, I think Ari Aster in one of the interviews with him talked about how he really wanted all of the Horgans to be really, like, not sinister.
They're not. They're very charming.
Like, they're very charming because they're very, like, this is their beliefs. Mm-hmm. Like, he didn't want it to feel like a cult if you just looked at any of them. And I think part of that is, like, by not having a charismatic leader ruling the cult, where it's just, like, it seems like they're all very happy to be here. Mm-hmm. And, like, you know, if they wanted to leave, they could, but they're all so happy to be here. Why would they? You know?
Yeah, totally.
Like, like we were talking about with Pele, like how sincere is he? He seems very sincere. Everybody there seems sincere.
And Ingmar,
like nobody seems coerced.
Yeah,
other than the new bloods.
But is it sort of like you know, like they don't know anything else? Like they don't,
because they grew up in it.
But they do have, you know, their summer
where they go off
age where they can go do
which
other
is like
stuff.
Does everybody do that?
However,
how
maybe
far do
everybody,
they go?
But like speaking of Rumspringa, you know, like kind of being like this Amish sort of like pilgrimage, like go to the outside world, like
before you like recommit.
Overwhelmingly, like the Amish people who go on Rumspringa, they're like, yeah, I'm coming back. Mm-hmm. You know, like they come back.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something, you know, you got to get them young, obviously, you know.
Right, yeah.
You know, so there is a belief structure. They have a scripture, and there obviously, like, is a Satan, but they're not, like, Satan worshiping, because, like, even, you know, the May Queen dance is, like, in defiance of like,
the black one.
The black one or the dark one.
Which they're combining with, like, more Norse, because they also talk about Ymir, who is a Norse primordial being. So it's like they're sort of combining religions and also just sort of have a general, like they do a lot of just general nature and cycles and nature worship.
Yeah, so there's like some pretty great, you know, like pagan stuff going on with nature and rituals. And,
I really like Pele's line about how nature just knows instinctually how to stay in harmony. Everything mechanically doing its part. I don't know, just sort of like that being what their belief system is.
Which he says when he's high on mushrooms.
Yeah, he says when he's high on mushrooms.
Yeah, but yes.
Noticeably. But yeah, just this idea like that seems to be their belief system is just like these cycles of nature.
Mm-hmm. And that being, and sort of like.
And like there are some other gods or like black ones, evils, but it's like not the forefront of their belief system.
So as I said earlier, I got a lot of really great information from this article. People still don't realize Midsommar is about white supremacy. The first line is, Midsommar is a cautionary tale about the ability of white supremacist groups to increase their ranks with promises of support and comfort.
Yeah.
So I've got a 7 bullet point list backing up why the Horga are white supremacists. Obviously,
it really was when you said that, because I'd watched the movie once before, and was just like, they're Swedish, and like literally did not think about it.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm white, so I'm used to seeing white people and not thinking about it. That's but no, the moment you said it, I was like, oh shit, they do. Oh shit! Oh no!
Yeah.
Damn it! I got indoctrinated again.
Yeah. Well, and actually, Marco Vito Odo mentions that, like, you know, it is like sort of insidious. You know, like, and an audience, presumably white audience, is like not gonna catch it either.
I'm even Swedish.
Exactly. Yeah. But like, you're totally right. Like, they're Swedish in Sweden. Like, what are they
what do you
doing
know?
their Swedish thing?
They're Swedish. So, but it's like if they're bringing in new blood, then why are they all still? You know, because they talk about sometimes we have to bring in outsiders so that we don't have to deal with the incest. And it's like, then why are you still all so white?
Yeah.
Why isn't Josh or Simon being picked out for any of these mating rituals?
Nope.
What's going on?
Nope, not gonna happen.
The moment you said that, I was like, oh shit.
Fuck, yeah.
And then I looked at all the rune stuff and I was like, oh shit.
Well, now it's, yes, absolutely. But, you know, you're right. Like, the runes are an aspect of a lot of people's just cultural heritage.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
And like so many things got ruined by the Nazis.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly.
So totally the first point as to why the Horga are white supremacists. It does seem like on the surface, like all of this stuff is just kind of part of their culture. And you can see between like modern white supremacist groups in the United States, let alone in Europe. That's what they kind of use, like that tradition as like a shield
Right.
against like racist accusations, you know?
Right.
And like, you know, they claim to be like honoring their ancestors with violent actions, you know, and are really deeply concerned about like the idea of segregation. There are only white people. And, you know, what is really interesting about Midsommar, like, as a film, is that in contrast to a lot of other horror movies, it happens almost exclusively in the daylight, right? It's very bright.
Yeah, people talked about that.
Kind of illuminating every dark corner, you know?
They're all wearing white.
They're all wearing white all the time. And it's just really hard to ignore whiteness as a theme in Midsommar.
Yeah.
And so someone could make an argument that, like, well, you know, it's like, you know, a symbol of purity, but also, like, why is whiteness associated with purity anyway?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, because there's a lot of other things we can associate whiteness with. Bones and death
Yeah, sure.
is one of the things we can associate whiteness with.
Snow, freezing to death. I don't know.
Yeah. Cold, being so like antiseptically clean that it's like sterile
Right.
and like unwelcoming. That's
Yeah.
another thing we could associate whiteness with.
Right.
But no, we go to purity and virginity and goodness.
Also, like, the Orga kind of do, like, lay their cards out. Like, they explicitly tell their guests how they control their bloodline.
Yeah.
Like, carefully picking who has kids with who.
Yeah.
Do you know who else would love to carefully pick who has kids with who? White nationalists.
Yeah.
What the article says is, like, that's the ultimate wet dream of white supremacists.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like, the elders, again, putting their cards on the table, like, they say they look outside of their community for, you know, new blood, and they can recruit for the breeding purposes, right? But, like, they only look for breeding in the white people, right?
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Anybody looking around in that community could see that.
Yeah, Josh and, you know, I'm going to clump in Simon and Connie,
Yeah.
right, are really only invited to be used as a sacrifice. Meanwhile, Christian and Mark are chosen to be breeders and then sacrificed.
Yeah.
I do believe that Mark probably had sex with that lady in the same way that...
But, I mean, yeah. Because even from the beginning, she was kind of giving him eyes. So it seemed to be like that was a possibility on the table.
Yeah.
Whichever way they were going to go with him, they weren't really sure.
And then, you know, Danny is, like, kind of targeted by Pele and, like, the Orga more generally to become a member of their community.
Yeah.
Like, to, you know, recruit an outsider.
Oh, I absolutely believe that Pele wants to have lots of children with her. Because, she's that blonde, green eye.
Yeah.
That she's what they want.
She cute, yeah.
And she's cute.
And she's cute.
It's just beside the point, I feel like.
But she is cute. And also, like, especially now, like, what do, like, white supremacist groups and white nationalists do to, like, gain strength in their numbers? Like, they don't go around, like, shouting threats.
No.
Right? Like, their weapon is a sense of community.
Yeah.
Especially in these times when, like, everything is so, like, fractured and, you know, there's, like, so much, like, climate anxiety. Like, everybody just wants something that makes them feel safe and secure. And so if you are not paying attention, you know, somebody might really come to idolize the kind of, like, peaceful seeming, nature-loving culture of the Orga, unaware that, like, they are falling right into, like, white supremacist recruitment strategies, which really just plays into a lot of cult tactics in general.
Yeah.
You know? And then I've got one more. Do you want to say what you were going to say?
Okay, I was just going to ask if you're familiar with cottagecore.
Only tangentially.
Yeah, because it's just kind of like a popular aesthetic
Yeah.
interest right now in certain
Right.
groups. It's probably gone a little bit out of fashion by now because these things go pretty fast.
Yeah.
But I know that that's something that happened in the cottagecore, I don't know, fandom or whatever you want to call it, that it was really easy for white supremacists
Infiltrated by white supremacists.
Yeah, to recruit through there because it was this idea of like this like kind of down home, sort of cutesy, cottagey things that was very easy for them to be like, oh yes, and the women baking in their cute little kitchen and like
men chopping wood.
Yeah, and then it was like this very like, because it was the same sense of like this community and this cutesiness and this like comfort and home, and that it then was very easy for.
So insidious.
Yeah.
You know, what's really interesting is that, like, we've mentioned a little bit already, and it happens several times in this movie, where the community kind of like comes together to like empathize and share pain or pleasure with the sex scene, right? But only ever do that for the white characters.
And also do it in the same way where I talked about sometimes like the runes seemed like this very aesthetic surface thing.
Yeah.
Often it seems like the way that they empathize, at least with Danny, is like very surface and aesthetic too. where it's like they're making her feel like they're holding her and that they're feeling this with her.
Oh, they are love bombing her so hard.
But they're mimicking her.
Yes.
Is specifically what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a very cult thing. It's a mirror. That's where the mirrors are in Sweden.
Yeah.
There they are.
The tapestries and the mimicking of empathy.
That it's not an actual understanding of how you feel. I mean, it feels a little more genuine when Pele's like, oh, yes, I understand my family also died or what, like that. But like these other things where they're just like, yes, this person is dying, so we're also going to scream as if we're being burned alive is like, okay, but that's not actually doing anything for anybody.
Right.
It's very surface and aesthetic.
It is much like more of a mimic, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And a love bomb, like you said.
Yeah, so that community pain or pleasure sharing only happens for the white characters, right?
Yeah.
And then like the non-white people who die alone in the dark or like off screen just entirely, right? Like we don't see Simon die. We hear but don't see Connie die, right? We don't see Mark die either, but whatever, who cares? And then
I mean, but that's the thing. We don't really see anybody die except for in the Stupa. That's like the only really I'm not sure we really see Christian die. We see it from the outside. We see them all beginning to burn.
Yeah.
But then we see it from the outside and the building collapse.
Yeah.
So like the actual moment of death isn't there.
That's true. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned already, like Simon becomes the victim of the, quote unquote blood eagle, which is probably the most violent and painful death.
Yeah.
Of all
and
of
it's
them.
definitely the most graphic thing that we see.
Very much,
I feel like.
yeah.
I mean, I guess the only other thing would be in the Stupa when they bludgeon the guy who lives.
That's
good
just
stuff.
And they like go back to it a few times.
Yeah.
And
but like at that point, it's like he's already dead.
right. Yeah. But like we see, it's like, yep, those are two people with bashed in heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it's like with Simon being the one who like did not consent and then was like maybe tortured.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a lot worse than.
Yeah. I
But
think
then
so. Yeah.
Josh, we see him get bludgeoned.
Well, yeah, we just see him kind of get hit once.
But he's still alive because we can hear him moaning.
Yeah.
So then he's just left.
And then he's gone. And then
in that state for
don't we end up seeing like
he's
part
buried
of
underground or like his leg is sticking out of ground or something.
Because don't they need him or like some part of him?
Yeah, they bring him
to be to be put into the sacrificial pyre, whatever, I don't know. And obviously, like a white supremacist cult is one way of having a cult. There are myriad ways one could have a cult. And so I was kind of looking into like the cult indoctrination techniques as we see them in Midsommar.
Yeah, because there are definitely some. I remember clocking that right away when I was like, wow, Pele and Ingmar immediately get these people high and then like confuse them about what time it is and like disorient them.
Right.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Oh, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. So I found another really great article, Community and Family, The Cult Indoctrination Techniques of Midsommar by James Reinhardt. And so Midsommar walks a very fine tightrope because it puts the audience in Dani's shoes as she becomes a pawn in the game she doesn't even know is being played. In the end, there's a sense of catharsis because Dani believes that she has achieved just that. But like the audience, she's been manipulated into feeling this way. In fact, much of the horror of Midsommar stems from Dani having very little agency at all, despite what she may think. Midsommar is really a film about how certain people and groups will exploit your grief and pain for their own benefit and how Dani only trades one toxic support system for another by unknowingly being indoctrinated into a cult.
Yes. I mean, that was another thing, how so many people watched this movie and like really girl bossified Dani.
Yeah.
They really saw this as like a movie of empowerment and it's like, yeah, get a girl.
Yeah.
Like kill your stupid, evil, abusive boyfriend.
Yeah.
But it's like she does not end up in a good place. Like she doesn't win just because she killed her shitty boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like she's manipulated through this whole thing. This is not a movie about empowerment. Like this is her becoming what the Horga and Pele wants her to be.
Yeah.
They are never actually there for her. Her being the May Queen doesn't actually give her any choices. Like she said, they say they gave her the choice between the two sacrifices. But like, why does she have to make, like, that's not a actual choice.
Okay, so you're taking everything I'm going to say.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm just saying, she isn't liberated. She's just fucking trapped in a prettier place than she was in before.
Well, and then let's see what happens when winter comes.
Yeah. No, and it's just, it's really funny what that quote just said about like how so many fans were like, woo, Dani!
Yeah.
Get it! And it's like, oh, we would all be indoctrinated into a cult, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So, obviously, this is just like cult 101. Like, step one, recruit people who are really vulnerable, and Dani is super vulnerable.
I know. I noticed this time around, maybe you noticed this too, is that right after Pele is first like, oh, I'm really excited you're going to come. Yeah. Here's pictures of the May Queen.
The May Queens, yeah.
By the way, I was really sorry to hear about what happened. Like, brings up her loss right there. I'm like, oh, you're laying the groundwork, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, I see you.
And so this film actually is a relatively accurate depiction of how cults target and recruit and isolate and indoctrinate new members. In fact, it does such a good job of the cult indoctrination process that, like, the audience, especially an audience who does not have an experience being in a cult, would probably be forgiven for, like, not picking up on these tactics, ellipses, until it's too late.
And I would say that, in particular, from my experience looking at fans and my own experience, that it's also probably very much white women.
Yes.
Who are not picking, like, I feel like other groups might have an easier time picking up on these things, like the white supremacy, when there are people who have to be on the lookout for white supremacy, you know?
Yeah.
But white girls get to watch this movie and be like, fuck yeah, girl, get your revenge, and not need to worry about the cult.
And honestly, I feel that way.
I mean,
a little.
It's hard not to, because the guys are so shitty to Danny.
Fucking sucks.
Yeah. That at the end you're kind of like, yeah.
And she finally, through whatever means, either by like her own agency, which is not, but like gets the one up in the position of power over Christian, right?
Yeah.
And I was reading this other article. It might have been this one. I can't remember. One other article I was reading for research that was like, you know, in a civilized society, it is not a proportional punishment to be sewn into a bear suit and burned alive because you're a shitty boyfriend.
Yes.
And I was like, but isn't it though? I mean, especially from Danny's perspective, after
everything
being broken down into this cult.
Yeah, even as the audience, you're like, I see why she made that choice.
Fucking burn that guy.
Of course I'd burn that guy. Yeah. Instead of one of these nice Hargan people? Yeah. I'm not going to burn one of them.
He's gonna be standing up straight. He's smiling. He's like, I'll go sacrifice myself.
Yeah, no. I'm going to save that guy.
Wow, it's really the thought that counts. Like, go ahead, man. Sit back down. You're not getting sacrificed today.
Yeah, we already got Ulf and Ingmar doing their part. They're fine. Like, we're good. No, it's an interesting experience to watch this movie.
And I mean, like, the same could be said for Mark. Like, it's not a proportional punishment for being a dick and disrespectful to their culture. But, like, again, isn't it though? Yeah, like, fuck that guy. But also, like,
then it's like, but then we think of Connie and Simon.
Yeah.
And it's like, they did literally nothing.
Yeah.
Other than maybe not love Ingmar enough.
And they wanted to leave. And they actually kind of could have just let him leave.
They could have just let them leave.
Yeah, because
I mean, I guess they would have had to worry about them telling people, but
who's gonna believe them?
And I'm not sure that they would have, because I feel like they would have just been so.
Yeah,
I don't know. I would have been so overwhelmed and.
But they needed this. They needed the sacrifices. Though.
But they needed the sacrifice. They were never going to be allowed to leave.
Yeah, they were never going to leave.
And going back to it not being a girl boss movie, the fact that Connie is also a woman.
Yeah.
Who was very much murdered.
Very much
for the sake of your white girl boss, whatever.
Yeah. Also, we haven't actually mentioned this yet, but it's just absolutely very interesting when Father Odd is there, like, saying hi to them, talking about his frock, right?
Oh,
and he's welcoming them, and he's like, hello, welcome. And when he welcomes Danny, he says, welcome home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay.
It's a way warmer welcome.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Pele's been talking about this girl.
and then Danny kind of wonders aloud to Pele, like, what she's doing there, you know? And I'm sure Pele is like, there's
honey,
lots of reasons you're here. Yeah.
My queen.
So that's just step one, okay?
Yeah.
So step two is offer the support that vulnerable person is looking for, right? Pele does that all the time.
That when he's like, Christian's my friend, I love him, but when you needed him, do you feel held by him?
Yeah.
Do you feel held by him?
Right. So what Danny wants is somebody to, like, share her grief with, right? To be emotionally available to her, right? And at first, Danny's main source of cult manipulation is Pele, right?
Yeah.
Who
does a great fucking job.
Is stoked she's coming, you know, like you just said, stoked she's coming to Sweden, then says, like, sorry about what happened. He says, like, same thing happened to me, you know.
He talks about how when this happened to him, he had a community, a family that held him.
Yeah.
And that's what she deserves to have.
Yeah, Pele spends most of the film showing Danny, like, the attention and the warmth that Christian won't, you know.
Gives her a birthday present.
Classic cult recruitment technique, you know. And, you know, kind of using the cult sense of community as a selling point. He's manipulating Danny into thinking that the Horga can be the support system that Christian isn't.
Right,
you know? This moves us on to step 3, love bomb.
Yep.
So, as the film goes on, Pele and the rest of the Orga engage in love bombing. And just for people who aren't sure, love bombing is just like a form of psychological manipulation where the recruit is being subjected to just like overwhelming affection. So we see, obviously, this happens when Dany is crowned May Queen.
Yeah.
And like adorned with praise, right?
Oh, everybody loves on her.
Yeah.
And that's when Pele kisses her.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't take that long. They start to love bomb her earlier than that, but that's kind of just like a big, obvious example, right?
But yeah, no, they definitely do start it.
Yeah.
Even before that.
Step 4, manipulate and begin to isolate, right?
Isolation, so important.
So important. So yeah, a lot of cults have like compounds or like other places where they require members to stay to ensure that like the cult maintains total control over every aspect of their lives, right? So like the Branch Davidians in Waco, which is mentioned by Mark almost the minute they arrive.
God. Oh, Mark, buddy.
Yeah. Because like the Orga are like genuinely isolated and seem pretty independent from the outside world. Sounds like there's some trade going on, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Because they have like lumber and stuff that they're maybe trading, but
yeah. And then, a really intense form of isolation is murder. That's kind of how the Orga isolate Dany from her friends by murdering them one by one.
Did you see the fan theory that Pele killed Dany's family? I think it's so stupid.
No.
It's so dumb, but like a surprising number of people have brought it up as like
No.
as like a way to get her into the cult. And like as far as I can tell, the main reason for it is that when we see her parents in bed, there's like a family portrait or like a picture of her and it has like flowers over it, like a crown. So like it's the idea that like maybe Pele was there and did that and like chose her. And it's like, no, it was just symbolism, honeys.
It's just symbolism.
Like, no, he did not do that.
No.
Like, what the fuck?
And then like why the like distressed suicidal bipolar sister? Why that then?
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Yeah, no, that was just something that like primed her for it.
Exactly. Yeah. So like that's
and don't worry, they did other murders later.
Yeah. So
the murders are coming.
Yeah. And then there's Dany's isolation from Christian.
Yeah,
right? Which
they really
obviously
work on that.
Doesn't take a lot.
Like
Pele takes every opportunity to make Christian look bad.
He
which,
really
again,
does.
Not hard.
Not hard.
He sucks. He forgets her birthday.
Yeah.
He's the worst.
It's not Pele's fault.
Yeah.
That Christian forgot her birthday
Christian
and he remembered.
Genuinely suck. Yeah.
Yeah. It took the time to draw a nice little picture for her.
Yeah. And Christian himself, he gets drugged and manipulated into having sex with one of the cult members, which like also kind of works as that like final nail in the coffin for their relationship.
Right, yeah. It seems like they're like, you don't want to go in there, that's not for us. Like they're kind of trying to keep her from seeing it. Right. But they never actually stop her from seeing it.
Right, almost kind of in a way of like reverse psychology. Yeah. Like, oh, you don't want to go look in there.
Yeah, that's not for us. Yeah. And then it's like, well, I'm the queen, so I'm going to go see. Right, yeah. And it's like, but it is like, that was like the last bit of family she felt she had. So that's when she has her like biggest breakdown, is when she loses him. And that's when they sweep in and do the mimicking thing and like make her feel quote unquote held.
Yep. Which leads us to step 5, love bomb some more. They really ramp it up once Josh, Mark, Simon, and Connie are gone, which like that a really key moment of manipulation and a really extreme example of love bombing is when the women of Orga surround Dany after she discovers Christian's infidelity, right?
Yeah.
And like mimics her cries of, pain and betrayal. And I also thought that like it's what was really a really interesting piece of imagery to me is like, she wins May Queen, they put the flower crown on her, they carry her around, and then they put like that flower dress on her, like kind of that robe, and how that like limits her movement. She's almost kind of like weighed down by the flower robe.
Yeah, it's one
dress.
of those things where they're like, they do that too when they like raise her up on that platform and like parade her around. Yes. Where it's like they're putting you above them, but they're also controlling where you go. Yeah. And then with this dress, so it's like, we're making you our queen. We're lavishing you with all of this.
But like you stay here.
But you stay here. Yeah, it's another one of those things where it feels, or it has the look of empowerment, but is very much the opposite.
Yeah. That leads us beautifully into step 6, which is keep control by any means, including altering reality. Right?
Yeah.
So there's like a long history of cults using sleep deprivation techniques, malnutrition techniques, like demanding incredibly like physically exhausting exercise for hours upon hours a day, and as well just like straight up drugs. right?
And there's the part where Mark says something about like, are they trying to starve us when he's talking about the food because he thinks it's gross?
Yeah.
Which is another one of those like sort of like, oh, Mark, you're kind of on
the fool accidentally said something correct.
And then there's also like they literally do that maypole dance exercise thing where they really wear everybody down. They wear her down. They break her down.
Yeah. So to make members like susceptible to suggestion and also like unable to think critically for themselves. Yeah. Right.
When the final state we see Danny in.
Yeah. Not only is Danny physically and mentally exhausted from competing for the title of May Queen, she's also under the influence of a hallucinogenic drug.
Yeah, and she's like emotionally wrung out at that point too.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, again, this is like that is like the last of several instances of like the use of hallucinogenics. And I'll be honest, my use of hallucinogenics is quite limited. But the one time that I took psilocybin and actually like felt an effect from it, I was wiped out the next day.
Oh yeah,
because like I used up all my serotonin.
Oh,
you know, so like that's what happens when you use drugs, and so like you're just like exhausted, and they're just kind of keeping them going. Like nope, it's a 9-day festival. Like we got feasts and we got ritual suicides and like we got stuff to do. And like continually feeding them drugs is just like whew, that is truly exhausting. Okay, last and final step: isolate entirely. And it's not a coincidence that the Orga publicly make Danny decide who the final sacrifice is. And like they put pressure on Danny to choose them, right? Like this is your test.
Yes.
Us or them, right? Us, like the people who have like lifted you up and given you what you wanted, or like your shitty boyfriend, right?
Yeah, I know. It's like not even a choice.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's also not a choice.
In so many ways, like they're a large group that like outnumber her significantly. Yeah. Like they've shown her unwavering attention,
that she's never gotten.
Like Christian, who like just betrayed her, and like I don't think she knows that he's also like impaired. It doesn't really matter, I don't think.
Yeah.
So of course it's not surprising that she chooses Christian because there's no choice.
But it's also like if she actually thought about it, how could they ever let Christian go after everything?
They wouldn't
possibly let him go.
They wouldn't, yeah.
Like he was gonna die no matter what she said.
So that's like
but she's not in a place to think about that.
Exactly. So like that's the real horror, is that like Danny is forced into making this decision, right? And the Orga ensure that she's got nowhere else to go. She's got no remaining friends. She's got no family. And she's an accessory to murder now, right? So she really... the only recourse she has is staying with the Orga.
It's really interesting in terms of what you said about her being accessory, of that cycle of the beginning of her sister murdering her parents and doing this, killing herself. Mm-hmm. And now Danny is complicit also in like a sort of murder-suicide ritual situation where she's put in the exact same position as her sister. Just in terms of the cycle and starting where we ended, ending where we started.
Mirror.
Yeah.
And something that people talk about when talking about like leaving a cult is like the exit cost, right? You know? So like the exit cost of her leaving is far too high.
Oh, how would she possibly?
How could she? She can't.
Like physically, I don't know how she would leave.
She's like physically isolated as well as like mentally. Yeah.
And then like the accessory to murder part. Yeah. There's just so many reasons why it would be so hard for her to leave. Where would she go? Would they let her leave? Will she die?
How would she leave?
Yeah. Will they kill her? She doesn't know.
Yeah. We were already talking about the two organs who sacrifice themselves and, they're told, like, feel no pain, feel no fear. Yeah. And then, like, one screams when he's set on fire. And then they all kind of scream together.
Yes.
And now that's really interesting because I always did read this as genuine.
See, I go back and forth. I kind of feel like it's both. Because I think everybody maybe not everybody, but most of the people in the community have also fallen for it. Yeah. So they are genuine when they're like, this does help. We are going to scream with them. And that is something that's good. And like these cycles are good. And we're doing this, sacrificing these people to then bring in 9 new and like the rebirth cycle. It's all important. And like they all are really bought into it in a way that feels very genuine. But that doesn't make it
real.
Yeah. It doesn't make it still not a manipulation, even if they don't realize that they're doing it, because I don't know, because somewhere in there, all of these things were set up and made. And it's like, who did that? And why is that being passed down?
Why? Yeah. So hold on, just like one little extra part of like this quote and then like kind of my reaction to it. So even though the final shot is Danny's, joyous smile, just moments before that, she's like screaming and vomiting.
Yeah.
Before she's kind of realized the implications implications of her actions, you know? And then before she then like literally just kind of gets caught up in the moment, you know? And the
Which is like, how could you not?
Who were previously mimicking the cries of pain are now celebrating their deaths.
They get really ecstatic and weird. Like some of them are laughing, some of them are crying, some of them are yelling. They're all over the place.
Because those shared, you know, mimicked feelings, according to James Reinhardt, are superficial. Much like Danny's smile at the end. That's what James Reinhardt has to say about it. I don't know if I'm exactly on that page.
Yeah.
I don't know if I read it like that. I always saw Danny's smile as like a genuine reaction because like we are allowed to feel multiple feelings at once.
Yeah.
And catharsis is a real thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And it does seem cathartic for her.
Yeah. And so like...
And she's also not using her brain.
No, she's totally zonked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, this brought up a couple like questions for me. It's like, does Danny realize at this point that she's trapped? And if she does she care?
I mean, because what else does she have?
What else is going on? Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually really like Danny's smile at the end. Like, I really like that as like a way of ending this film. After like screaming while, you know, the hut burns down her shitty boyfriend, you know?
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, I do agree with what James Reinhardt is saying here is like, she has absolutely exchanged one unhealthy support system for another.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but like maybe this one will work a little bit better for her. It's mutual, you know? Like, maybe she's like, you cannot leave. And she's like, it's cool. I don't really want to.
Right. Which is kind of how I feel about everybody there. Yeah. And what I mean about them being genuine.
Yeah.
Where I kind of, part of me does feel like Pele is like, this will be good for you. I'm so glad you're coming.
Yeah.
Because I want this for you, because you will feel better. You will feel held by this community the way that I was held.
Yeah.
The way that
and
it
the
feels,
way that you are looking to be held.
Yeah.
Classic.
That it feels really genuine. And then at the same time, they're a white supremacist cult. And it's just like, oh, complicated feelings.
We ready to play archetypes?
Yeah, let's play archetypes.
How do we want to do this? Do we want to like go character by character? And
well, I feel like, okay, there's the really obvious one. So
Yeah.
I feel like we should just get it out of the way, which is that Mark's the fool, literally.
Literally. Yeah.
We've already said all we're going to say about Mark being the fool. He's the fool.
Right. And what I noticed is that he does die first. Oh, wait. I think maybe Simon and
It's
Connie
so
die
hard
first.
to tell.
Simon and Connie die first, but they're not part of the five.
Well, I guess that's the other question, is who are part of the five.
I think it's Christian, Danny, Mark, Josh, and Pele.
Yeah.
So Mark is the fool, but he does, of these five, die first. Mm-hmm. So,
And he does die trying to get laid.
That's true. But like he dies first and he's not the whore. So like immediately Cabin in the Woods rules are
Yeah.
irrelevant, right?
And it's really, I mean, I think the other one that's the clearest
Yeah.
is Josh as the scholar.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's literally why he's
going
there.
to Sweden with the intention
Yeah.
of studying Midsommar rites for his PhD.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then that's also how he dies, is because he is seeking this knowledge.
Yeah. I feel like Christian's the whore.
That was my first instinct too. I feel weird about it.
I don't know why. I just want him to be.
Well, see, I feel weird about it because I do think that there was a lot of lack of consent in his. It's the only sex scene that we get.
This is true.
But there's such a lack of consent, which often actually kind of happens with the whore, where it's like, ooh, it feels bad to call her a whore for that reason, you know, where it's like, oh,
But
this
I
wasn't
feel
really
like
something that they chose.
He is, like, if we think about the whore as someone who's been corrupted.
Yeah. And somebody who
pretty
needs to be
corrupted.
punished. He's the one death that is most clearly a punishment.
This is true.
And the whore is always the one who is most clearly punished for a transgression. You know, the other ones are a little more vague about it.
I just feel like he was kind of the last one, and the one I had left was whore. So it's like, all right, Christian's a whore, I guess.
Yeah. Do you feel the same way that I do, where Danny kind of has athlete vibes?
Yes, I do. Yes.
I mean, her stamina is unparalleled.
It's true. Yeah, it's like she wins May Queen, which is like no small feat.
Yeah.
You know? Which leaves Pele to be the virgin, which works for me.
It works for me so well, because for some reason there is a link between virgins and drawing.
Oh.
Virgins often are artists.
Evil Dead.
Cabin in the Woods.
Yes.
There's just a link there.
Yeah.
I don't know, as just being sort of like an outsider who's not partaking in all of the like the drinking and the drugs and the sex. There's the virgin off in the corner who's just like doing a solo pursuit, like drawing or reading or whatever.
Yes, Pele is way less sexual than like the other men he's hanging out with.
Yeah.
I don't find Josh to be that sexual either.
No.
But like he's the scholar, so you know.
Yeah, that's fine. He doesn't have to be.
And he's also just like really sweet and unassuming. You know, like he's very virginal in that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I love that we agree.
I know. I mean, I guess the only thing that, I totally agree with those are our five, but the only other thing I was thinking about, I was like, instead of Pele, because he's not technically part of it. I mean, because he's technically part of the...
Right, yeah.
Should Connie and Simon be a part of this? But I didn't really have a good reason.
Yeah, we don't...
They make one passing reference to, I think Mark says that he saw Connie running like she was training for the Olympics or something, which then Mark did not think was a red flag.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, I mean, that's not enough to make her an athlete. Though, again, her and Simon are really active and being like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Let's get out of here. They're the ones making the plan to get out of here.
Okay. So then if Simon's the one who dies first.
Is he the whore?
He's the whore.
He did steal Ingmar's girl.
He does need to be punished.
He stole Ingmar's girl.
And then Josh, I mean, the thing is that, like, Mark is still the fool and Josh is still the scholar.
So then that makes Christian the virgin.
No.
Which is just no.
Yeah, which is why I thought maybe Danny could be the virgin.
Because the final girl,
but she's not the final girl, and this is not a slasher.
Right. Yeah.
Pele, I guess could be like kind of considered the final boy.
Yeah.
Kinda.
But he's never targeted by...
Exactly. He's in on it. He's the one doing the thing, right?
The slasher.
It's like last time when we talked about Sleepaway Camp, and it's just like, okay, this is a slasher. Like, who's the psycho killer? Angela. Who's the final girl? Also Angela.
Yeah. This has been Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Follow us on Instagram at Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots. Shout out to Sound Guy Matt.
As always.
Appreciate everything you do.
Next time we are going to be watching Dracula.
Yeah, the 1931 Universal monster film. So good. And until next time, don't forget.